Okay, we're gonna try this again. It should be working now, right? Somebody give me a sound check. Let me know if my sound is properly working now, right? Symbolic of the country. That's all. Sorry, apologies for that. For some reason, I guess one of the ports had went out on my interface, so my sound was acting a little funny for those who were like, "What just happened?" All right, so can I get some sound confirmation that everything is good so we can jump right on into this? Um, Perfect. All right, let me get some hellos in and we'll just go from there. And I'm so annoyed. I had that whole video already prepped a few hours ago. It's gonna mess up my spot in the algorithm, but it's okay. All right. What up, Sarah? What up, Andre? What up, Courtney? Sasha Bell, Tanya West, Julian Steve. Shout out to you, Poison Ivy. We're here. Yes, we are. Dev I am. What up? What up? What up, Inside? Hikey Life 323. Less likely said, "Hey, that's perfectly okay. It happens to everybody. I can hear you loud and clear." Yeah, it is what I purposely set this live up hours ago to be ready so I could just come on here and go for it. And still, there's always a surprise, right? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into a few things just because there's so much to cover. Um, let's see. Somebody said, "Hey, would you do book summaries for those who can't catch the lives?" Well, so for the book club, it's unrelated to the lives, unless you're talking about the book club summary. Um, who knows? Maybe that could be a thing. I have to figure out how I'll go about doing it. I don't know if I squeeze that into these lives just because there's already a lot we cover, but who knows? We can throw something figured out. You know what I mean? Um, Sarah, you said entertainment more than political today? Not really. I think it's still gonna be more political. The entertainment subjects, I will talk about them, but I'm not as locked in with the entertainment stuff as I really want to be. So it's kind of a brush over, but still converse. There's some bigger things that I think we need to kind of lock in with right now. Okay. Anyway, so jumping in, first order of business, the book club is tomorrow. Again, we're reading The Color of Law, and we're covering chapters 1 through 3. For those who want to participate, all you have to do is click the Zoom link. When I made the announcement on the community tab about this live and the book club, there's a link right there that you can click. Or if you can't find the community tab, you can just go to calvinmichaels.com, go to the drop down menu that says book club and reading list. And then on that page, there's a link that you can click to get to the book club. And again, the book club is not on the channel, so it's something separate, unrelated. So for people who don't like to be on the internet or who may be afraid that, oh, if I join his book club, I'm going to be in front of 80,000 people, you won't. It's just us. So that is at 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, which will be Monday, October 6th. Today's the 5th. Sorry. And so that is that. Let me start off light before I get into some of the heavier stuff. So I got an opportunity to go to the Four Queens One Stage tour. My friend Whitney got us tickets, which was a pleasant surprise. I was excited to go to this one because at first I wasn't planning on going, mainly because I've seen 3 of the artists on the ticket. Now, this is the show that has Gladys Knight, Stephanie Mills, Patti LaBelle, and Chaka Khan. I've seen all of them live at some point aside from Stephanie Mills. So I was debating as to whether or not I was gonna go. Plus, I just have a lot of things I need to like finance and it's fun. So I'm like, okay, you got to stop spending money on all these concerts. But yeah, Whitney got us a ticket. I was very, very excited. By the way, I did not get to, normally I write all my notes down and I have them on a piece of paper. I did not write it down. I just have it in my other laptop. So if you see me looking here, that's just because there's another laptop right here with my notes on it. So just understand, I'm not distracted. I'm just referencing my notes here. But overall, I thought it was a really, really great show. It was so funny too, because what's so wild with everything happening in the country, there's nothing like getting in line to go to this concert and then you see the National Guard outside the concert. I'm like, everybody that's coming to the show is like 60 plus. This is the demographic of older folks who are enjoying their Friday night out. I promise you don't have to worry about nobody cutting up tonight. So I was just looking at the National Guard folks like, oh, okay, yeah, it's real dangerous here at the Gladys Knight show. Like, ooh, spicy, right? But what I love seeing all the older Black couples just on like the date nights and everybody just really doing it up and dressed up, and I loved all of that. And it was also still a generational crowd, right? There were people my age that were there. There were some that were younger, but I love seeing one, people who were there to remember the prime of these artists, but also those who more so grew up on these artists because their parents played them on the weekends when it was time to clean up. In our house, Patti was played a lot when it was time to clean up. So, there's those references. But I will tell you what is funny, though, because it was an older crowd. Like, by 9:40, people were already clearing out, and we weren't even halfway through the show. I think the show ended about 11:30ish. It was like 9:40, folks who was getting up out of there. There was this older woman who was sitting next to me who, I don't know what age she would have been. I'm going to guess she was at least probably above 65, right? And she kept looking at my phone because every now and then I kind of, try to get a little bit of footage here and there. Because again, these are entertainers that are in their 60s, 70s, and their 80s. We never know how much longer they're going to continue touring. So I was like, let me make sure I just get some footage. So the lady kept looking at my phone like, baby, you got such good quality. You know what? I'm going to give you my number and I want you to send me every video you took. And oh, okay. Because she was like, honestly, she was like, look, I'm about to go downstairs. And when I go down, I'm not coming back up. I got stuff to do. Because it was only like 9:35, 9:40. She was like, I'm ready to go home. And Patti hadn't even got on stage yet. Or maybe Patti had just started. Because the order was Gladys, Stephanie, Patti, and then Chaka. And she wasn't playing. She left. And it was crazy because like before Chaka got on, that venue was like, I don't know. The initial show in general was maybe about 90% full. By the time Chaka got on, it was down to like 60% because so many people were going home. I was like, older people do not play about being in bed on time. They were like, we are not going to be out in no traffic driving at night. We ain't doing it. So they got their money's worth and bounced. But it was a really great show. One of the things I've been trying to do, especially, it will never sit right with me that I never got to see Michael Jackson live. Now, to be fair, the U.S. leg of Dangerous tour was canceled. And even then, I would have been 3 or 4, so I wouldn't have remembered it that well. Prince, I'm the most mad about because he was here in 2015 at Warner Theater, and I was like, I'll get tickets later. And then he went on to Glory the next year. And then Whitney hasn't toured the U.S. since 99. And at the time, y'all already heard my TLC story on the last live. So yeah, speaking of Whitney. Right. So I just made an effort to always make sure I try to catch everybody, especially those that are seasoned and those that are, that are getting up there in age. So that's why I'm always telling you guys about all these artists. You notice a lot of times when I'm telling you about concerts, it's always an artist that's over the age of 40, like way over 40. Right. So that's just been a thing. But as far as the show, can I just say, I'm glad somebody gets it. My fear initially was 4 different artists on this headlining tour. There's going to be 4 different bands and everything else. And somebody corrected me on this comment before when I was talking about, maybe it was the New Edition show. Because I was saying what I loved about the New Edition show was that they just had one band for all the acts. So when it was Tank, Guy, Keith Sweat, New Edition, it was just one band and they just kept coming out. And somebody in the comments was saying that's lovely, but when you cut it down to one band, it also takes away jobs from people that are musicians. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And so what's genius about this show is every act had their own band. I think Chaka and Patti shared a band, but Stephanie had her own band. Gladys had their own band, but they had this stage that rotated. So what would happen is Gladys was first. So while Gladys is on stage and her band behind the stage, they're already setting up the next band. And then when Gladys gets off, the big screen rises up, the stage rotates, and it just twists up the next band. And then Stephanie does her thing with her band, and they're already backstage setting up the Patti and the Chaka band. I was like, that is so genius. And it was crazy because when I tell you there were no intermissions, because we were trying to make sure we got there on time too. Because I was telling Whitney, I was like, Gladys starts on time. I'm telling you, like when I saw Gladys in 2019 with my godmom, we were at Wolf Trap. And it was like 7:58. My godmom was so pressed to try to get, like, I think she's trying to get a hot dog or something from the concession stand. And right when we get in line, you hear the drummer, and they go straight to the left overboard. I'm like, oh, now we got to rush to our seats. And so when I tell you they started right on time, so we were like, okay, well, once Gladys is done, maybe we'll get a drink because we both wanted a nice little drink, right? You get a drink and have a good time, right? And we're like, we'll just get a drink after Gladys is done. But when Gladys finished, before we could like get up, they said, Stephanie. I'm like, what? Because the stage was rotating, the thing came down. I was like, so it was just like pop, 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 pop. There was no break in between any of the artists. So I thought that was genius because, again, people don't like for their time to feel like it's wasted. And I know when we saw the Great Escape Tour, which was a great tour, but it had a lot of people on the ticket. It was, God, I'm almost forgetting who was all on it. It was, I think, OMG Girls or whoever's Tiny's daughter is. She had some act that was on that ticket. Tamar was on that ticket. Monica was on that ticket. June's Diary was on that ticket. Escape was on that ticket. And you'd have to just keep sitting and waiting for the bands to switch. And sometimes it'll take up to 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then even again, when Whitney and I saw Escape, I think last year, the year before, it was, and that was a big ticket too. It was 112 Silk, H-Town, Tevin Campbell, Tamar, Monica, Escape Again. And again, it was like you just had to keep waiting for these bands to set up. And so it took so long to get in between intermissions that by the time Monica closed, she had to cut her set short. So with this show, I thought it was really dope that, again, they just had this rotating stage that was circular. So as one artist is getting off, they just rotate it. The next band is already queued up, sound checked, ready to go. So that was genius. Now, as far as the actual artists, now everybody knows I go hard for Gladys. Gladys, like I say a million times on this channel, is my absolute favorite alto. She is my favorite alto, along with people like Brandy and Tony and Layla Hathaway and some of the others. But there's something about Gladys that I've always loved. I love her pocket. But I will say, for me, it was kind of sad to watch. And we kind of talked about some of the rumors that were out there on maybe 2 lives ago when people were saying, oh, you know, she might have a condition or things are off. I'll just say from what I saw, one, she's still in great voice. When she's singing, she sounds amazing. She's there. But there were moments where she did seem a bit delayed. And there were moments where, you know, the background singers would kind of feed her the verse and she jumps back and right back into her pocket. And so that part was a little sad. But what I loved is that I think she felt the love of the crowd because the crowd gave her a standing ovation when she was finished. She was only up there for like 20, 30 minutes. We didn't catch the full Gladys set because we got there a little late. So we got there during the middle of it. But like I said, she, I'll say this, because I know a lot of people are saying, well, they think she may be getting exploited or she needs to sit down. My thing at this point is if this is what's keeping her going and if this is what's making her happy, let her do what it is that she wants to do. I just want her and all these artists to do what they want to do. But there is something that's noticeably different. And I said this a few lives ago, because again, I was at an event in 2023 that she was speaking at. And things were a little off when she went up to the podium. And I said, okay. And we were kind of all talking about it. Like, I think we, you know, and this is just reality. This is just what happens as people get up. Things start to change. But like I said, musically, she was amazing. Sounded really good. When it comes to somebody like Gladys, even though I saw her in 2019, like I said, amazing show, great pocket. I love that she still has her pretty much all of her voice. She's somebody I wish I could have seen in the 70s. Right. Just because I'd love to get like a fuller show. Like her set, like I said, was like 20 minutes. When I saw her in 2019, it was a split ticket with the OJ. So she did about an hour. But I'd love to hear some of those other songs that we don't often hear about. Yeah, you're going to get the Midnight Train to Georgia's and You're the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me and Neither One of Us and all of those. But, you know, some of the Gladys songs I really like, or Gladys Knight the Pips. One of my favorites, again, I always talk about is I'll Be Standing By. I think that's one of her like best just vocals ever. Please go back and check that song. But like songs like I'll Be Standing By, It Should Have Been Me, Everybody Needs Love. I like Daddy Could Swear, I Declare. I'd love to hear some of those live, but you know, it is what it is. You're born when you're born. Be grateful that they're even still here. And so it's like I said, it was amazing that she still has her pocket that she sings in. So Gladys looked great. And God bless her. So, you know, that was the only thing. It was a little sad to see because you want these people to be here forever and to be in their prime forever. And you just realize that time is going to do its timely thing. After Gladys was Stephanie. Stephanie, I've never seen. Stephanie's one of my dad's favorites, right? He had every Stephanie vinyl. He even had her gospel album, right? That honestly, even with Stephanie, you know how she has the song, I've Learned to Respect the Power of Love. The first Stephanie song I heard was I've Learned to Respect the Power of God because she had a gospel album that came out. That's what I heard first. So I always knew that one first. But Stephanie, first of all, I guess you can't call your elders cute, right? That'd probably be disrespectful. But Stephanie Mills is cute. Like she has just this really cute energy about her. And she definitely knows how to give you your money's worth. She's very, very professional. And I think she understands the importance of making sure that the audience feels valued. And there's a certain essence and a certain energy she had on the stage the whole time. The band, again, polished. Everybody had amazing bands, amazing background vocalists, everything. But, you know, there was a polishing that she just had with her presentation. And, you know, what was really cool, too, she closed with Home. And what I like is I can say that I've seen both Diana and Stephanie Mills perform Home because I saw Diana in 2020, right before the pandemic. Diana was the next to the last concert I had gone to before the pandemic started. Lauryn Hill was the last show I had seen. And then I think the country shut down maybe a week and a half later. But yeah, Stephanie had some gems. You know, she did Power of Love. She did Something in the Way You Make Me Feel. But again, going to this conversation of, God, I want to see some of these people in earlier years because I would have loved to hear like Put Your Body in It. Put Your Body in It. That's a fun song. It's like her first single. I love her version of Feel the Fire. And there's 3 versions of the song. There's the Peabo Bryson version. He does a really nice one. Then there's the Stephanie and Teddy version. That's a duet. And that was cool, but it's something about Stephanie's solo version of the song. That's the one that I go to. That's my favorite one. I think I told this story a long time ago. One time we were all at karaoke, and my friend Tanae was singing "Feel the Fire," and so me and then one of our other classmates, this girl Kira, were going to be her backup singers. And the problem was the three of us were all singing the different version. Tanae was singing the Peebo Bryson version. I knew the Stephanie solo. Kira knew the Stephanie and Teddy Pendergraft. So we were up there just sounding like anything. But yeah, never knew Love Like This before. It was fun to watch. Just fun energy. She was running across the stage and jumping, and yeah, you couldn't tell her she wasn't 25, right? So Stephanie was fun to watch. Right after Stephanie was Patti LaBelle. I think Patti LaBelle might have been who most of the crowd came for. It seemed like she got the best reception coming out because everybody loves Patti. And by the time Patti got on, I think I was sitting there like, wow, I'm really seeing all these people live. Like sometimes you don't realize what it is that you're kind of just sitting in front of, or the royalty that is, bestowed upon you, and you kind of have to sit and be like, oh, okay, these are really like legends. I'm just sitting here casually watching on a Friday night. And because when I think of Patti, I just always think of being in my mom's car as a kid on the way to daycare, and my mother playing the heck out of the Burning album, right? That was 91. If you saw my New Jack Swing deep dive, you noticed I probably referenced her song Feels Like Another One probably 5 or 6 times in that video, because that's one of my favorite songs, especially out of the New Jack era. But Patti had a fun set. My highlight of her set was, she did Right Kind of Lover. That's a favorite as well. She kicked the shoes off. I thought that was funny. Now, she said her foot was hurting. She had an injury she was working through, so that's why she kicked the shoes off. But I was like, you kicked the shoes off anyway. But okay, Patti. And she has the fun part where she always brings people on the stage and lets them sing and dance. That's always fun to watch, to get the crowd participation and see the people like enjoy themselves. There's a portion where she had a speech where she kind of just talks about understanding where we all are right now, especially in DC, because we got the shutdown over here, and people are going through it. And so just even hearing that speech that she had, and just understanding that she sees everybody, right? And she understands. There's just a feeling of, and this is for people in the audience, not even for the celebrities, but there is a feeling of just like when you feel that you are loved by people that you don't even know. That's kind of the energy that Patti gives off. And I said that even when Patti and Gladys did their verses that time. If you go back to that In the News episode, I talked about how we were still heavily in the pandemic. I just said something about that verses just made you feel like everything was going to be all right, because your aunties and your grandmas and the elders got it. Y'all be all right. I think a lot of folks during the pandemic, especially when we were locked in, a lot of people really got connected with the aunties and their mamas, and just to hear their voice, right? It just makes you feel a little bit more assured. But yeah, so it was really nice. And then DJ Active was a part of her set, which I was like, I know DJ Active. That's Janet's DJ. Like, he's been with Janet since 2015. So it was kind of cool that he was there, because Patti would be the one to do a wardrobe change, which that did make me laugh, because Patti went and changed, and not only did she change her clothes, she changed her wig. Like when she came out, she had this blonde wig thing, and then she went backstage and came back out, had a black wig on. I was like, oh, all right, that is very Patti LaBelle-ish. So that was funny. But yeah, she had an excellent band, and I love that her band had a brass section. There was this backing vocalist named Cedric Ballard that she did On My Own with, who, when I say that man sang down, like excellent, right? And like I said, Patti's always been a favorite. Some of my favorite songs, again, of course, Feels Like Another One. When You Love Somebody, I'm Saving All My Love for You. It's off the same album, the Burning album. I like her song It's Time. That's from the Timeless Journey album. I want to say that's what it was called. That's the album that has It's a New Day on it. If You Ask Me To, her version, I was introduced to that one. I didn't know the Celine one until years later, but I always enjoyed the Patti version of that. On My Own is a classic too. So Patti was fun. Now, I'm not going to lie. In this house, we stand Chaka Khan around these parts. Chaka is, if I would have been around in the 70s, Chaka would be to me what Janet Jackson was for me as a teenager, right? I loved some Chaka Khan. So that was who I was excited to see, even though I've seen her before. And the only thing I didn't like I said, so many people had already left, because a lot of the crowd was just, they're older, they're going home. They're not going to be on the freeway at night. So I was almost offended, like, how dare you all leave before Chaka gets on? But Chaka, what I love about Chaka is that Chaka just does what she wants, right? Chaka does not care. She's going to give you the hits, but if she wants to do an abstract song, she's going to do it. And the thing about Chaka is just, her presence is so big, right? And Patti is also a hard act to follow, but Chaka fit right into that pocket. And yeah, like I said, if I would have been around in the 70s, Chaka, Tina, Gladys, and Natalie, those would have been my four. And something also was making me feel some kind of way, because I was like, damn, I feel like if Natalie Cole was still alive, she would have been on this tour. But what I love about Chaka is that her set highlights just how expansive her catalog is, right? You got the R&B, you have the funk, you have the jazz, you have the rock, you have soul. Like she does a bit of everything. And she still, when you're talking about her voice, she's still giving her background singers a run for their money, toe to toe on every note. Like Chaka can still pull out all these big notes with no effort, which is what I love. And I think one of my favorite parts is she does My Funny Valentine, right? And now again, everybody who's there, they want to hear the big hits. They want to Do You Love What You Feels and the Tell Me Something Good. My Funny Valentine, it's on the Waiting to Excel soundtrack. It's known, but it's not one of those songs that people like, oh, put that on. But what I love is that Chaka set in it, right? It was probably like a 7-minute rendition of the song where she let the band just do their band thing, right? The lights had adjusted. It was like this blue reddish light to kind of fit the tone of the song. And again, Chaka has very big music that's in your face, but My Funny Valentine is a lot more stripped down, where it's really just the vulnerability of her voice, right? And when I tell you, she just sat in this really beautiful pocket and just tore that song up. That was my favorite part of the show. And so I love that. What else? And like what I love too is then she closed with a bang, right? Because she closed with like pop, 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 pop. Like, because I think she opened with It's My Time, or whatever that song is. She opened with that one. But so people, and then somewhere in the mix, Do You Love What You Feel, which is a favorite, came on. But then when we got to that end, after she had gone through the sweet things and Tell Me Something Good, she said, surprise on y'all, I Feel For You. I Feel For You is a song that will never get old to me. It has been on my gym playlist since forever and a day. It's probably never coming off, right? I Feel For You just has this, even hearing it thump in an arena is just a different kind of experience. And Chaka was running, she got the kicking that foot out and then drop it and kick again. Because Chaka does a little, she does this little twist thing when she dances. That's go on, Chaka. So she did I Feel For You. And then right after I Feel For You, she went to I'm Every Woman. That's like the big universal anthem. So that has their people that were walking out started turning around and going back to the seats. Oh, okay, let me finish this one. Then she said goodnight and they thought the show was over. And so people are getting up to go. And if you're at an arena, if the lights don't come on, the show is not over. And so as people still walking out, then they and people turn, oh, wait, hold on. So fun show. I really enjoyed it. Go and support all of these legends while they're out here. All of these artists that are over the age of 40 and 50 that are still touring, we never know how much longer they're going to keep at this. So catch these people while you can, because it really is a gem, right? And even if you're not even into them like that, just go to say that you went. Like, the thing that I'll go to bed feeling good about is knowing that there's all these different people that I've seen. Almost everybody on my list of who I wanted to see since Prince has passed, I pretty much almost saw all of them. So I'm like, beautiful. As far as, let me see, is there anything else I want to say on this? Oh, speaking of Chaka, I forgot to shout his channel out on the last live, but Malik Kashad, that's the guy he used to have the Black Music Archives channel, and I think he just changed it to his name now. And he's the one that does those videos that dissect like the vocal stylings of different artists, and he does a lot of like documentaries centered on Black music. And he has a really cool series out right now, specifically centering on the background arrangements of Chaka Khan, where he's gotten different background vocalists together and where they're pretty much putting on a show where they perform Chaka Khan songs and everything. But they really dive into just the way that Chaka approached all of her songs. So when you like watch a Chaka show, the way that the background vocalist will bend the notes and sing things differently. Like if you've seen Chaka enough, you know that a lot of times the verses are different. So if we do like I Feel For You, the original version, baby, baby, when I look at you, I get a warm feeling inside. But when you go to her live versions, baby, baby, when I look at you, she just does all those kind of things. So while Chaka was performing, I was over here just analyzing the background singers. Like, they do that. So that was really fun. But yeah, I saw Chaka in 2021. Excellent show. There's some songs I still have not seen her perform that I wish I could see. I want to hear her do Papillon Butterfly live. That's a really great remix she did. Stop On By, Rufus is one of my favorites of theirs. I love One For All Time. I've seen her do that one, as well as Angel off the Funk This album. I like her cover and rendition of Everywhere. That's a beautiful one. I don't think I've seen that live. I like Everything Changes. That's from that kind of New Jack album. It's the album that has Lifetime on it. And You Can Make the Story Right. I love, one of my favorite songs, like I've always said, Brothers Johnson, I'll Be Good to You. It's always been a favorite, but I enjoy the remake that Quincy Jones does of the song, because he wrote it. But where it's Quincy Jones, Ray Charles, and Chaka Khan. That song just gives me memories of being in my dad's car as a kid when we road trip. And my dad had the single version in the 12, right? And he just let that thing play at the house sometimes. So anyway, I've talked about this for a very long time, so I'm going to move on. But overall, I really, really needed that show. That it's been a week. And so that show just kind of brought my energy back up. So they were worth this 24 minutes that I gave them. So yes, go and see the Legends while you can. I think there's only about 3 shows left. I think they're all in California. So if you haven't seen the show, go and check it out. Anyway, I'm going to pause and read some comments, and then we'll go from there. All right. Plus, it's about to get a little dark for a while, so I had to start off real bright. All right. Y'all laughing about the lady who got. Oh, and I did send the lady her clips too. She ain't respond. I don't know if she ain't respond. She had an Android. I had an iPhone. I don't know if she knew how to open the thing, but we'll see. But I sent it to her. She said, "Yeah, baby, you taking good video. Just here, take my number down, because I'm not gonna get on." Because she wanted to get the Chaka Khan footage and the Patti footage. Just take my number down, and Whitney's over there looking like, okay. Because the lady was like, make sure it's okay with your wife first. It's like, okay. But anyway, let's see. Somebody said they wish I'd seen all 3 Prince, Michael, and Whitney. Yeah, that's the one. I'm never gonna sleep good on that one. It kills me. Now I have been in a room with Whitney Houston, if that counts. I was a seat filler at BET Honors in 2010 when she got the award. That's the time Jennifer Hudson performed "I Will Always Love You" and Kim Burrell performed "I Believe in You and Me." So I can say I at least had that, right? But it ain't the same, And the Prince one I'll always be mad at, because I could have just gone. I was like, I'll catch him later. Because, before Prince passed, Prince was performing every other day anyway. So it's like, you catch him. But oh well, you know what I mean? It is what it is. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Somebody said, Andre said, I used to work sound crew. Those band switches between acts were hell to pull off, but always a good show. Yeah, because I know they always take a good minute, because you need everything to be right, which, they already do the sound check. And then, again, switching bands and PA systems and plugging this up and amps and all that. And then in an arena setting is some serious work, which is why it takes a good minute. But I loved how they did it, where it was just, there was no break. I love that model. Hopefully, I'm guessing Brandy and Monica will have one big band together. So hopefully that's the same kind of model they have. If Kelly Rowland and Money Long had their own bands, just rotate them. And from, I think what I understand, they have the same production company. So we'll see. All right. Somebody said they love to see Anita Baker and Michael Bolton perform. We saw Anita Baker was that last year? Maybe that was 2023. Maybe that was 2024. 2023. Yeah, we saw Anita Baker. That was when she was on the Babyface tour. Let's see. Oh, I forgot. Save the Overtime for Me. I don't think I've seen Gladys perform that one. I want to hear that one too. All right. Let's see here. And I told my mama to get tickets to the show. She don't listen. Now she mad because they already went to Atlanta. I said, I told you months ago to get a ticket to that show. But yeah. Somebody said, what's my favorite YouTube video that I've done? Oh Lord, I don't know. It's probably one of the So What Happens. That's a great question. I honestly don't know. Probably the Tony Braxton So What Happened. The Tony Braxton So What Happened, and maybe the I don't know. I've done some really good. Most of my favorite ones are the ones where I really like reteach history, or not reteach, but teach history. So a lot of the nuggets that are my favorites are hidden in the news episodes. So those are some of my favorites. I have to come back and think about it. I never thought about that. Great question. So yeah, but now I will say my favorite kind of videos to do technically are these lives. Like I really enjoy doing these because they're, you do your notes, but I like feeding off the energy of the chat. So those are fun to do. I don't know. It varies. I don't really go back and watch my videos like that. Every now and then, if I need to get motivation to get back on my SHIT when I'm feeling a little uninspired and it's been a week or 2 or 3 and y'all are like, Calvin, where are you at? Sometimes I'll go back and look at other videos that I've done that are a bit more in depth, like the Music Talk episodes or, some of those other ones just to kind of get back in my pocket. All right. We got to keep it moving, y'all. I got to cover a lot of this stuff, but let's do a few more. Yeah, she closed it. Ain't nobody. Somebody said I do not like. They said they don't like I'm Every Woman. She should have closed it. Ain't nobody only. Dang, you gonna just pull the song out the set list? Say it just won't be in there. Done. Okay. Anyway, we gotta move on. Okay, let's get a little bit more serious here. We're gonna talk about Chicago, ladies and gentlemen. So before we start, let me just go ahead and read this article, and we're going to take it from there. All right. God, give us the strength to get through this live tonight. And this is actually going to be a very extended portion. So just hunker down for the next 30, 40 minutes because we're about to sit in this pocket for a minute because I got a lot I want to. There's a lot of things that correlate with this and that tie together that I don't want to brush over because I think there's so many things people aren't thinking about. Let me just make sure y'all can see my screen. Beautiful. Okay. ICE agents raid South Shore apartments. Trump says Chicago could become military training ground. All right. Chicago, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents raided a South Shore apartment building overnight as the city braces for a possible military deployment. Residents and neighbors are speaking out at what they call a traumatic event. My building is shaking, so I'm like, what is that? Then I look out the window. It's a Black Hawk helicopter, says witness Dr. Ali Muhammad. Wednesday morning, DHS officials said in a statement, in the early morning hours of September 30th, 2025, allied federal law enforcement agencies with CBP, FBI, and ATF executed an enforcement operation in Chicago's South Shore area, a location known to be frequented by Trende Aragua, I said that all wrong, but okay, members and their associates. Some of the targeted subjects are believed to be involved in drug trafficking and distribution, weapons, crimes, and immigration violators. DHS said 37 people were arrested. ABC spoke to Patricia Fisher, a woman who lives in the building. She said ICE agents took everyone in the building, including her, and asked questions later. They just treated us like we were nothing, Fisher said. Fisher said she came out of the hallway of her apartment complex on the corner of 75th and South Shore Drive in her nightgown around 10 p.m. Monday, only to find armed ICE agents yelling police. It was scary because I had never had a gun in my face, Fisher said. They asked my name and my date of birth and asked me, did I have any warrants? And I told them no, I didn't. Fisher said she was left handcuffed before being released around 3 a.m. And she was told that if anyone had any kind of warrant out for them, even if it was unrelated to immigration, they would not be released. They piling us all up in the back of the other side, and it wasn't no room to move nowhere, Fisher said. Citizen app video captured the chaotic scene, and neighbors say there were dozens of ICE agents. As I got to my unit to stick my key in the door, I was grabbed by an officer, and I said, what's going on? What's going on? He never actually told me. He said I was being detained, said Alicia Brooks. Neighbors like Ebony Watson say they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs. They were terrified. The kids were crying. People were screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out here crying. Then I seen a little girl come around the corner because they were bringing the kids down too, had them zip tied to each other, Watson said. That's all I kept asking. What is the morality? Where is the human? One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here, said, F them kids. Watson said trucks military style were used to separate parents from their children. Other neighbors said agents destroyed property to get into the building. They had a big 15-inch chainsaw with a blade around it, cutting this fence down, said Daryl Ballard. We're under siege. We're being invaded by our own military. Marley Sanders' boyfriend was detained, Sanders said. They had the black people in one van and the immigrants in another van, Sanders said. The FBI confirmed on Tuesday morning that they were helping U.S. Border Patrol carry out a targeted immigration enforcement operation in the area, adding that they have been supporting these efforts at the U.S. Attorney General's direction. Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Gregory Bovino, with his officers, spoke on the ground in an exclusive interview with News Nation. How about you live in this apartment next door to the How about you live in the apartment next door to the Trende Agua? I'm saying that so wrong. Aragua, I don't know what it's called. Members that are trafficking prostitution, guns, drugs, and taking advantage of American citizens in a violent way, Bovino said. Destruction was left behind inside the apartment complex with the doors blown off the hinges and holes left in the walls. Immigrant advocates and elected officials gathered to condemn the overnight operation. We're trying to fight so we can all stay in the neighborhood, but that can't happen when we have people pulling us out of our beds at night, said Dixon Romeo with Southside Together. While immigrant advocates say they believe 30 to 40 people were detained, federal authorities have not confirmed that number, so it's unclear just how many were held and possibly arrested. We're almost done, y'all. Sit tight. All right. Protesters have been gathering in response to the raids like the one carried out in South Shore neighborhood. President Donald Trump maintains that the surge in enforcement is about public safety, but protesters say this is about intimidation and fear. It's ridiculous that our tax dollars are going to these type of raids, said Nick Sues with the U.S. Palestinian Community Network, when it could be funding healthcare, housing, and other issues and needs of this community of Chicago. On Tuesday evening, demonstrators against immigration enforcement blocked off part of westbound Wacker Drive at Michigan Avenue. Speeches on Wacker were ongoing around 6 p.m. before the group started marching northbound Michigan Avenue, blocking streets into progress. All right, this is about the protesting. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Let me get to the... Okay. All right. Anything else in here? Trump suggests Chicago could be training ground for military. I'm going to just keep scrolling a bit. Okay, I got most of what I need in here. All right, let's talk. All right, so let me take a sip on this. My blood pressure's high. All right, so I want you to think about the way that this raid has been broadcast and also how it's been implemented, right? And think about the fact that it's presented to us in this very, very fast-paced environment. You even seen DHS released their own video showing the behind the scenes and everything. And I just want people to understand, because some of this has kind of been parts of the conversations that a lot of people, especially in this YouTube world that have really been locked in politically, have been saying this was the next thing that would happen, where Black people would be next in the mix, right? And understand that when it comes to us as Black Americans, we're always a litmus test for how far they can push a boundary, right? How far they can go, right? And the further that these boundaries become pushed, the more they become normalized, the more they become the standard. Because for some reason, when it comes to Black bodies, we're the guinea pigs. They have no problem doing everything to us because they recognize that collectively white America never really gets outraged as much, or the goalpost moves as far as to what's actually outrageous or what's offensive. I hate that my notes are over here. I don't like looking away. And the thing about it is, like, if we're talking about 15 years ago, all of this would have been an impeachable offense. This would have been Trump's ticket out the door. But now that things are normalized, right, we're going to continue to see this until the country says enough. And the problem is, you don't really know if you're going to get that. And that can't really happen because so much of this has become institutionalized. And it's this kind of violence and intrusion on our civil rights that has really become just the heartbeat of the United States. That's where we're at. And so it's becoming like the default to assume, and I'm speaking on when we're talking that heartbeat of the United States, we're in a space where anytime something happens to Black people collectively, it's assumed that it's something that we deserve. It's assumed that there's something we've done to deserve whatever came. It's assumed that no matter what happens to us, the authorities or those in charge, they had to do what they had to do because we're just out of control, right? We're such a nuisance, so we're such a threat to everybody, or so on and so forth. And even when it has nothing to do with us and it's another group of people, if we're just in proximity, we get to be collateral to it too, because you know what, they had something going on too, right? And they've always done that. So that whole idea of they deserve it. When we're talking slavery, how did they justify it? They used the Bible, they used conversations of imperialism, and again, it was for the good of the country. They deserve it. What happens to us is that's just the way it goes, right? When it got to the conversations of anti-Black violence that led into like Jim Crow between 1877 and the 1960s, they used eugenics to justify it and started saying, oh, well, genetically, we're just not built like them. And you got to be stern with them because they can tolerate more pain, or they're brutish. They're very aggressive. They just can't, the 3/5 of a person, right? All of that going on. And then it was also backed by policy and economics, right? And this, again, what you could say is the result of oppressive policy and using that as justification. Well, we got to redline these people because when we put them in our neighborhoods, our property values go down and so on and so forth. When in reality, like I've said before the concept of redlining or even ordinances became a thing, properties depreciated over time because, like we said a million times, American homes are not built well. Right? There's a reason why all of these wooden homes that we build, after 20 years, you got to do all of these different repairs. You got to go and redo the roof. You got to go and help fix the foundation. You got to go and do all these different things. And then in comparison, when you go to a place like Europe, a lot of those homes that are out there have been sitting there for hundreds of years because they're cobblestone, or they're not made with just wood that gets exposed to the elements. So yeah, housing used to depreciate. Once we got into the conversation of redlining and you wanted to keep people out, the way that you keep the blue and the green zones worth something was they appreciate over time, where it becomes impossible for other groups to even buy into that space because they legally can't do it anyway because they're forbade because of the redlining. And so yeah, that's what we get, right? And so this is where it gets interesting, right? Let's jump to 1968. Because the next phase, like we said in the beginning, when we talk slavery and everything, they used the Bible, right? They used the conversation of good for the country and imperialism. By the time we get from 1877 to the 1960s, again, it was more so economics, it was policy, it was eugenics, it's all the different things. By the time we get to about 1968, now the media jumped into this conversation. Because let's think about 1968, right? Let's share some stuff here. So we go to 1968, Nixon is running for office. What does he run on? I'm going to share the screen here. All right. Nixon says we need to run for office, and we're going to run this. We're going to run for law and order. All right? Things are out of control. Now, ask yourselves, what was happening in 1968 that we need to have law and order? All right? I know the chat already knows, so I'm going to give you all a minute to put it in the chat before I answer. What was taking place in 68 where there needs to be law and order because things are just so out of control that the presidential candidate needs to really reassure America that things will be okay. All right, chat, y'all a little delayed now. Somebody give me what happened in 68. Trying to make this a participation activity. Thank you, Tyler Hackner. MLK in Vietnam, right? So when we get to 68, this is what we get to. Work with me, folks. Sorry. All right, so we get to 1968, and then this is what we run into. We have protests in over 100 cities. Why? Because Martin Luther King has been assassinated. The very person who advocated for peace, used nonviolent protesting, used conversations of appealing to the humanity of white America, really tried his best to be respectable in his way and in his quest of ensuring that we all had the different, opportunities for civil rights, right? And they still took him out in cold blood. This makes America erupt. Every major metropolitan city, riots galore, right? So now here comes that conversation of fear. And we get into this space where now white America, who almost started to feel bad for Black Americans because they were seeing so many clips of Black people being hosed down, during the civil rights era, where it's like, okay, well, maybe things should get a little bit better. Something like the imaging of all the riots taking place made them all change their minds and be like, actually, you know what? I almost was supporting you guys, but now you guys are being violent again. There has to be law and order, right? And so Nixon starts, he wins his election, of course. And then what do we get? Nixon kicks off the war on crime, the war on drugs. And then we start to see a trend that starts to take place, which further kind of what you could say backs the claims that we were just so out of pocket. And so we just need some regulations. So then what happens? Nixon gets into office, right? Oops, wrong thing. Nixon gets into office. And then we start to see the incarcerations, right? Look right here on this line. As we get to why is my image not showing on my side? Okay, we get to 1970, right? This is shortly after Nixon's in office. Nixon introduces we have the war on crime. And then we also have the first phase of the war on drugs. And we watch incarcerations start to skyrocket. Now, this is just men. And then what also happens, right? We also have Reagan who comes into office and takes it up to the next level. And so we start to see this giant increase when we're talking about incarcerations. And it's not because people are committing more crimes. It's because specific neighborhoods and specific groups of people are being targeted more by law enforcement. More money is going into the budgets of law enforcement. More efforts are being put into over-policing specific neighborhoods with the people that they feel fit the description and fit the narrative of those that are violent criminals, right? Which would be us. That's what they wanted to paint. So we get into that space, right? So then we have the media, and this is something that runs well into the 1980s. And then there's a show that I always love to reference. Let's see if somebody remembers. There's a show that comes out in the 80s that really takes it to the next level, where again, this conversation of using our media to help paint that narrative. Can somebody in the chat tell me what that show was that was broadcast every Saturday, 8 p.m., 2 episodes, an 8 p.m. episode and an 8:30 episode, broadcast all across America? Not Geraldo, but he does have some conversations with his, not Miami Vice. Miami Vice was kind of fun and cool. It was still an issue, but man, there we go. Cops was filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven I messed it up. Damn it. Never mind. Anyway, okay. So then we get Cops, right? Cops comes on every Saturday, 8 to 8:30, and then 8:30 to 9 p.m. And so this is what Cops did when it came to the impact it had in our media. The Paramount Network, and this is an article coming out of 2020. This is after the summer uprisings, right? Paramount Network announced its decision to pull the plug on the seminal reality show after protests after George Floyd's death. police brutality. The cancellation is barely a first step. However, entertainment industry has an insidious, though unmistakable influence over how the public thinks about policing. It is necessary for people to understand how long and how thoroughly cops and shows like it have habituated tens of millions of people to the police abuse of Black, brown, and poor communities, increasingly comfy in the sewer of misrepresentation. Legions of viewers were numb to the need for overdue reform. To enjoy cops is to relish in seeing Black, I don't know why they use the phrase Latinx, because that community does not even like that term, but whatever. Latinx and poor men, right, choked, slammed, shot at, and handcuffed by police officers with no meaningful context or resolution to any given human being situation, whether it be mental illness, substance addiction, or wrongful accusation. Weekly footage exhilarated viewers through jerky body cams capturing men of color getting snared and engrossed them with narrative idolatry lavished on white cops. All of this is reflected and embedded structural flaws in law enforcement, as well as racial and class bias in the criminal justice system. Right? And so they put this imaging on every weekend that you're watching, right? You're watching the cops this and the cops that and everything else like that. And it would always be interesting because it would be like the most sometimes out of shape police officer, but they got their shades on. So they look cool while they're beating down these random people. But when you constantly put this kind of imaging and this narrative out there for people to see each and every day, it helps to support the idea that, hey, those people are violent. Those people can't have nice neighborhoods because they don't know how to act. Those people this, those people that. It creates an us versus them. It goes into that concept of the good guys versus the bad guys, right? And even as a child, we used to be excited to watch cops because a lot of times they were in our neighborhood, right? Pierce County, Washington, and King County, Washington were always on cops. And they always went to like the meth neighborhoods and go into the trailer parks and go drag the person who was beating his wife. And if they weren't there, then they went to Miami, right? They were always in Miami-Dade County. And so that imaging that you continue to see just perpetuated each and every day. And then remember, right after the cops, especially on Fox, what came on right after? America's Most Wanted with John Walsh, right? So it's just like you start to get into this space where many Americans buy into the idea that there are just so many violent people in this country. You need to really overforce and over-police. And one of the things that they would do on cops as well, too, and I remember this, a lot of times you have white women officers that are like smaller than me, right? And they go and they're trying to take down the big Black guy who, I don't know, he's resisting arrest, but he can overpower the cop. And so now you have the white woman screaming for her dear life because she thought she was going to be able to cuff the big Black man that's 6'4", 260 pounds, and she's screaming for her life. And those whimpering screams of a white woman, now all of America's like, oh my God, these people are so violent. They call in for backup. And then what happens? The white man with the shades, they run in there, and they jump, and they get tackling and beating with the baton. And so it's like, yeah, take them down, right? It's like a big, just high action, high paced movie. And so that's something that's been embedded in our media for 30 years, right? And so even as you're watching how the current administration is moving with all of this, that DHS video, that was very, very like, it was like a movie, right? They made it look like it was a war-torn apartment complex, you know, like a hero flick. And they made it almost as if they were going into North Korea in the 1950s during the Korean War. And so they made sure in that video, and I'm not showing it on here, but in that video, the only faces that you see that are not immigration enforcement or policing or anything, you either see Black men or you see Latino men. Every Black man has a do-rag on. Every Latino man looks disgruntled, or somebody has like a graphic t-shirt on, and that's all you see. You don't have any context in the video. You just see people in cuffs. You see doors getting kicked down. You see, you know, the whatever agent with his shade. They always got shades on. Got the shades on. Like it's a movie, right? Like they almost like get off to this, right? And so the thing is, when it comes to that, this is just the foreshadowing of what has always been. And they always use the same steps, right? The idea of like, because I'm going to say this, what happened in Chicago is, again, it's a part of a cycle that we continue to see. And they always use, like I said, the same formula, because you got to get America to buy into it. And how they always get Americans to buy into it is, again, scapegoat, make everybody afraid, make it seem like your life is in danger. It always makes you think of every time I take one of my friends to their hometown of Warsaw, Virginia. And by the time we get to like Rappahannock, mind you, there's nothing there. This is like an area of Virginia where your nearest neighbor is 3 miles away, right? There's not a whole lot out there. But every time there's this big old sign, and whatever's happening in the country at the time, that sign is always warning people of it. So back in like 2012, 2013, when everybody kept talking about ISIS, you get past this little town, there's this big giant sign, ISIS is coming. And I'm like, you think they're coming out here? Coming out here to do what? What are they going to blow up? the cornfields, like, be for real. There's nothing with the water tower, be for real. But like, again, the idea of getting that demographic of Americans to feel like somebody's always after them or that they're not safe, right? And so what they do is they create some kind of conversation about a threat that is so damaging and so near and dear and so close to your neighborhood that something must be done immediately, right away. And so usually it's gangs, it's drugs, it's violence. Let me use an example here. What do I want to show? Do I have it on here? What's that one? Oh yeah, perfect. Let me use this one. Let me use Orange Man just to kind of highlight some things here. So even when we go back to 2017, right? Your president. Now I want you to look at the date here. This is January 24th, 2017. Orange Man says, if Chicago doesn't fix the horrible carnage going on, 228 shootings in 2017 with 42 killings, which those numbers were not correct. Mind you, this is January 24th of 2017. He's trying to paint it as if there's been 228 killings just in them 20 days. And year just started. Up 24% from 2016. I will send in the feds. Now look at the date. This is only 3 days after he got inaugurated, right? And so again, that conversation of constantly painting the idea that there's a demographic of people who are so violent, who are so out of control that you not only do you have to step in, but you got to really go in there and shake it up, right? And so look at how the National Guard has been dropped off in specific cities. Look at DC, look at Memphis, two cities that have a pretty, a large Black population. DC's kind of losing theirs, but we still here, right? And so they get deployed. Or look at what's going on with like LA and Portland. If it's not a conversation about Black this, then okay, it's the immigration conversation. Or with Portland, it's the conversation of, oh no, Antifa. Because now in a place like Portland, you got white folks that are feeling some kind of way about what's been happening, and they're starting to finally say something. And so again, white resistance is really a threat to this entire movement, because that means they're losing their foreground. And so it's expected that Black folks will uprise or be pissed off about something. So it's expected to go and tear their stuff up. It's expected to go and raid the Latino communities and everything that they have going. But when white folks say, hold on, this is too much for us, then all of a sudden they really have to double down. So understand, Portland is about to get it hard, because Orange Man is going to make sure he puts them white folks back in their place and reminds them who's calling the shots. That's really what that's about, right? And so they have to nip it now with Portland to make an example out of them, so other cities that have white populations that may feel that, hey, this is starting to go too far, that they don't get any ideas. That's what that's about. And so think back to 2020, right? When 2020 happened and you had the uprisings, eventually white Americans started finally jumping on board. Now, a lot of them use it as their moment to get an Instagram photo or just be in the moment. But there were some who did try to be a bit more active and say, we got to do something about this. And what did we see the policing services start to do? You started seeing white people get beat up. Who remembers this image here? Let me pull this one up, right? So this image here, always remember this one, because in this one here, one of the officers ended up dropping something. This random white man was actually trying to tell the officer that you dropped something. And then this officer here, without any kind of provocation, no conversation, knocks this man down. Now, this picture is blurred, but if you look closely here, this man his head is leaking, right? This was an older elderly man, blood coming out the back of his head, right? Because again, when it comes to maintaining a status quo, white people will even be collateral if they're going against the grain. That's where we're at, right? So you have that. Then the next thing is, again, so they put the threat out there, everything's so terrible, oh my God, it's the end of the world, blah, 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 blah. And then the next thing is they have to drop the hammer. So that threat, not only do they drop the hammer, but they go above and beyond. Think about the fact that even when we're talking about this conversation of ICE, that ICE has received $32 billion in funding. That's more than any agency that's policing in this country at the moment, right? This is why you're watching so many people get hired into ICE. And this is why you're watching, which is actually kind of sad, is you're watching your own neighbor sign up to be your oppressor, because there's so many people who are down bad who need this kind of money. And so they're saying, hey, I know it's kind of jacked up, but they got a bonus. This $25,000 and they're going to pay my student loan. So I don't mind going in and rounding up some folks. And now it's getting to the point where ICE is going after citizens, right? So you have that taking place. And then the thing about it is, what you're also seeing is when it gets to that point where they have to hit the heaviest hammer, that also means that anything goes, right? That means that there's not even a standard of how they go and implement or try to enforce these laws or try to fix whatever the problem is. It's kind of like those movies where I think of like Low Down Dirty Shame. Remember that with Keenan Ivory Wayans, and at the end of the movie, by the time the movie's over, they done blew up half the mall. They done had all these speed chases, or any of these movies where they go and they're just going after one drug lord, but they done ran and burned down 6 buildings and dropped a bomb on this and blew this thing up and had this bridge collapse. And then at the end of the movie, the police chief is like, "You spent $1 billion of damage, but you got the job done. Great job." That's the phase that we're in now. So even when you look at this image here, I want you to look at this image. This is from that same apartment complex. This is where somebody lives and their window has been shot out. This is where somebody lives. Their window has been shot out. This is not about going after any kind of gang members or drug anything. This is what you call an abuse of power. This is when we get to a space where those who are in these law enforcement agencies no longer have any regulation over them because so many rules have been stripped down and cut back. And again, that was a part of the conversation about Project 2025. We talked about this before the election. I'm not even going back to the I told you so's right now because I need us to stay focused. But again, once we get into the space of qualified immunity, we get into the space where, again, you give agencies the agency to do whatever they want. This is how we get into this spot. Now, I want us to go a bit deeper, right? Because the other thing is now the mission also needs to expand. It's not going to be limited to just that apartment complex. You saw that Trump has already said, well, Chicago might have to be, the stomping ground for additional activity. Now they're trying to paint it as if Chicago is so out of control in the same way that DC was so out of control when the National Guard came here that we might have to go and do more. And like I said, what did I tell you? We were going to the concert to see Patti and Gladys. National Guard is there. So they're out here with the M16s watching people limp with gout as they try to get into the concert. And then they forgot that they got tickets in the 400 section and can't walk up the stairs. And they got to hold up the elevator line because they're not as mobile as they used to be 40 years ago. But these are the people that are the threat to the well-being of the city. So let's send the National Guard out to the Patti, LaBelle, Chaka Khan, Stephanie Mills, and Gladys Knight concert because it's so dangerous here, right? And so they're going to continue to paint that narrative about the entire city. So, but it's deeper than this. And I want us to understand that what's happening in Chicago isn't specifically about just that complex. This is a conversation about greed and geopolitics. So we're going to go on a journey. So I need you to stay with me, right? Now, one of the things that we keep hearing about, right? We've heard a lot about Venezuela, right? We keep hearing about Venezuela, right? Venezuela this, Venezuela that, Venezuela this, Venezuela that. And we've seen different actions and stuff take place, right? So one of the things that we've seen our military literally blow up speedboats, literally blow up civilian, vehicles in the water. And the claim is that they had drugs. So when we look here, President Donald Trump said Monday that he ordered another military strike against a boat that he insists, not intelligence, but he. And even at this point, we can't trust intelligence because everybody's compromised. He insists was carrying illegal drugs from Venezuela to the U.S., telling reporters that the operation left 3 people dead, big bags of cocaine and fentanyl floating around in the ocean. The strike resulted in 3 male terrorists killed in action. You know them terrorists, they got them terms, right? And terrorists has just become a part of the lexicon, especially after the Bush era, right? The terrorists, the terrorists, right? And so he wrote in a social media post, "No U.S. forces were harmed in this strike. Be warned, if you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you." The strike was the second of its kind in less than 2 weeks in what appears to be an unprecedented use of lethal force against a criminal enterprise. In the past, the U.S. government has relied on U.S. Coast Guard and law enforcement personnel to board vessels for inspection, much as it did on Friday. But earlier this year, Trump insisted that drug cartels should be in the same legal category as foreign terrorist organizations, paving the way for the kind of lethal military force reserved under the law to prevent an imminent kinetic attack against Americans. This goes back to what I was saying, where they get to expand the realm of how much they want to do. We're now in a space where there's no due process. You just get to assume what the issue is, and you're going to drop a bomb on it. We're now dropping bombs on speedboats, right? So there's no due process. We already have a Coast Guard to handle that, but here we are. But it gets deeper. I want us to realize, again, our conversation of geopolitics and our conversation of greed. And so what is one of the things that Venezuela has? Somebody in the chat, please drop this off. Something that Venezuela has a lot of. And it plays a role as to why we're spending so much of our energy and time all of a sudden thank you, Adnerb Norma, oil, right? And not only just oil, but literally the most in the country at the moment. So let's go to the stats, shall we? How much oil does Venezuela have? An estimated 303 billion barrels as of 2023. I was about to say VH1. Venezuela is home to the largest known reserves of oil. Saudi Arabia ranked second with 262 billion barrels. Now, we can't really go after them because they got too much. But boom, surprise, followed by Iran, another country that all of a sudden we have a new interest in. We had an interest in Iran around 2007 when John McCain was running. That was initially the plan. That's why some of them were so pissed that Obama won, because one of the things that America was planning to do around the time that we were coming out of the Bush era and going into what was thought to be the McCain era was we were definitely going into Iran. Didn't happen, right? And so Barack Obama, he did the Iran deal. Why do you think Orange Man was so pissed about it? Why would you give the terrorists $1 billion? He's about to die stressed out, right? So boom, here we go. Now all of a sudden there's a new interest in Iran again. 208 billion barrels. And Canada, the country we've all of a sudden decided that Orange Man wants to annex, because Canada also has 163 billion barrels of oil. It could be the 51st state. There's a reason they're doing all of this. It's not just about ideas. Again, this conversation of geopolitics as well as greed, right? And so globally proven oil reserves, which measure the quantities of crude oil that are economically recoverable with the current technology, total approximately 1.7 trillion barrels. And the United States at this point in time, because Orange Man has decided to gut any kind of ideas around, clean energy or green energy. No, we're not doing that. We're going to stick with the oil. Now, other countries are finding alternatives and saying, well, let's do this and let's think about climate change, and oil reserves eventually are going to run out. You got to be prepared for something else. And America said, nope, we're going to go back to what we know. Good oil, burn, baby, burn, drill, baby, drill. And so, yes, Venezuela is going to be the enemy. Canada, we're going to annex. Iran is so out of control. We're going to start a few things with them. Oh, Hamas and what's the other group? I can't think about the group, but there are such threats that we got to start bombing these people. Like, they think everybody's stupid. Please stay with me because all of this is connected, right? And so let me get into the piece where we talk about the conversation of greed. All right. I want to go back. I'm going to stick with Chicago for a minute. So I'm going to go to this next article. Stay with me because this is all going somewhere. I promise it is. All right. Now we get back to this. This all is tied together. South Shore residents return to ransacked apartments after ICE raid. It looks like hell. Let me make sure y'all can see my screen. Okay, perfect. A now renting sign outside touts granted countertops. Inside, residents are trying to make sense of the raid that made their already neglected building even worse. And as you can see, they got some images of what people's units look like after the raid, right? He's an Army veteran, now retired after 3 decades of working for the U.S. Postal Service. Federal agents pounded on the door of his South Shore apartment about 2 a.m. on Tuesday. I need these little ads to close. All right. But armed agents busted open many doors after arriving in U-Haul trucks to raid the 130-unit apartment building at 7500 South Shore Drive. They woke up residents to handcuff them with zip ties and led them into unmarked vans. Roger Johnson, a U.S. citizen, said he heard people dropping on the roof before FBI agents kicked in his door. He was stuffed inside a van with his neighbors for what felt like several hours until agents told him the building was clear, he said. They didn't want to tell me why I was being detained, Johnson said. They left people's doors open, firearms, money, whatever, right there open. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said federal agencies arrested at least 37 people in operation in the building, which they claimed is frequented by members of the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Agua, or Uruguay. TJ, we're going to call it TJ. About 300 federal agents, some landing on the roof from helicopters. Okay, we got Black Hawk Down up in here. We got Black Hawk helicopters in Chicago. 2 a.m. descended upon the building, according to News Nation, which was invited along for the operation. Right? This is like Cops in 2025. It'll be back on Paramount, I'm sure. Right? Top tier ratings. The report didn't mention women and children appeared to be among the detained, said Brandon Lee, a spokesperson with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. Organizers worry many people were taken without warrants. These were families with their children escorted out in the middle of the night, Lee said. This administration is using PR efforts to try to turn communities against their neighbors. Residents said the building has become home to Venezuelan migrants. The raid saw people's apartments turned upside down, citizens held for hours, and their neighbors taken away to unknown places. Belongings were stolen from apartments after agents left the building open. The Army veteran who went blind and recently was asked not to use his name, said the agents moved on to the next apartment after coming to his home. I was trying to protect myself, he said. My nerves were shook. By Wednesday afternoon, the building appeared largely abandoned by residents. Unsigned waivers allowing DHS to disclose records about you to third party were on the front gates near Know Your Rights flyers. Broken windows scattered the property. Anyone could just walk in. Take note of the condition of these apartments because that's going to lead me to my next part in all of this. But this is one of the units where somebody lived, right? It says an apartment unit's door is seen busted open to a room flooded with water damage at 7500 South Shore Drive in South Shore on October 1st, 2025. The apartment building was raided by federal agents. All right. Dan Jones stood outside with police officers to file a report after his valuables from his mattress and iPod down to his air fryer were stolen after agents broke his door. Jones slept at an aunt's house following the raid and returned to find clothing and garbage that wasn't his all over the apartment floor. A small moving crew said they had been hired after the raid to clean out now vacant units, but didn't say by who. Doors were boarded up. In one room, there were zip ties and blood stains on the floor next to baby shoes. Flies swarmed around open fridges. Water damage had caved in ceilings, strollers and air conditioners, and more things left behind blocked the middle of dark hallways. The lobby elevators were broken with their buttons perpetually lit on the down arrow. There was a strong odor everywhere. Jones said the building's dirty conditions predated the raid, but this was the worst he'd seen the place. It was the first of the month and rent was due. It looks like hell, Jones said. ICE really is just a game. Jones said he had been cordial with the Venezuelans who moved onto his floor. They were cool people, Jones said. We took it upon ourselves to at least keep it clean over here. This is that picture I showed you guys earlier. Residents said at the property started after, pay attention to this, please, a new management company was brought over a year ago. Cleanings became less regular, and 2 armed security guards led to squatters, Jones said. The Army veteran was guided through the mess in the lobby Wednesday by a caretaker. He couldn't see the worst of it. The former postman complained of his mail being routinely stolen and that he'll have to keep living in the building as he tries to find somewhere else. It's a good place to live. It was a good place to live when I first got here, he said. The building's ownership traces back to Wisconsin-based investor Trinity Flood. According to public records, Flood is facing a $27 million foreclosure lawsuit for not making loan payments on 3 South Shore properties she bought for $18 million in 2020, according to The Real Deal. The city also filed suit in February against Flood's LLC over 15 building code violations at South Shore Drive's property dating back to 2023, seeking that it would be put under receivership according to court records. The building failed its past 14 annual inspections, according to data from the city's Department of Buildings. Building throughout has fire extinguishers that are missing. City lawyers wrote in his legal complaint, all stairways are filthy with the smell of urine. Flood could not be reached. That's Trinity Flood, the company. And the buildings management company, Strength in Management, did not return requests for comments. The property was most recently estimated at under $3 million market value. Is there anything else I want? I think I got most of what I want on this part. Okay, I got pretty much everything I need to see. But again, these are the images. And now the thing is, one of the triggers that made them go to this building was that there was this store that had the word Venezuela spray painted on it. And that meant that there must be gangs there, right? Here we go. And so that kind of brings in this conversation. So now getting to what I want to jump at, right? We said that there's greed. What was one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, that took place in the 1970s that brought a lot of people a lot of money that specifically affected the Bronx? We're just going to go in a bunch of directions tonight, so stay with me. The Bronx in the 1970s, what was happening, and how were people getting rich? Somebody said crack. No, crack wasn't there yet, but that plays into a conversation in the 80s. All right, somebody give me something. All right, Bronx, 1970s, going into the 1980s. I'll give that part. Not graffiti. All right, we're getting closer, slumlords. Thank you, Nan. Nan, you be on it, right? Come, landlords, burning buildings and getting the insurance. Yes, thank you. So when we get to those 1970s, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that starts taking place in Bronx is we start to see lots of places where people live all of a sudden burn down. All kinds of I won't say arsons, all kinds of accidents that start taking place, right? Where all of these different things are just happening and people are being displaced, right? And so it starts to just get really out of pocket over there and things continue to get worse. What I want to share here. During the 1970s, houses of the South Bronx were ablaze. 80% of housing was lost to fires, and 250,000 people were displaced. In contrast, the state pool insurance payout was $10 million, which is approximately $50 million today. Understand that payout is not for all of the Bronx. That's for each building that burned, okay? Each building that burned, up to $10 million, valued at $50 million today for each landlord, right? Nonetheless, the narrative that was pushed by the media, remember our conversation of media that we've talked about and how they now play a role in a lot of this and prevails to some degree today, was that destruction was the fault of the residents. They love to claim these people are burning their own houses down. Vivian Vasquez Izar. Ooh, this is a name here. Irizarry, okay, who grew up during this period, wanted to disrupt this narrative. This is about a film. I think it's called Burning. But anyway, we'll get to that. But anyway, all right. So we have that taking place in the Bronx, right? And so, what does that have to do with Chicago? Why does that mean anything? Like, who cares? Well, let's go on another journey, shall we? Let's jump back to 2021, shall we? All right. Again, this is all tying together, so stay with me. Then in November 2021, investigators at the Root Cause Research Center released a revealing report that filled in the rest of the picture. Through an analysis of documents obtained through an open records request, the researchers found that the city's redevelopment efforts led to the aggressive enforcement of nuisance offenses such as drug use. An astounding 85% of nuisance violations came in majority Black West Louisville. As part of its push to eliminate blight, the city established a place-based initiative squad to build low-level cases and execute search warrants. Now, what do you think that's possibly about? I'm gonna let y'all guess in the chat. All right, Louisville, Kentucky, 2020, 2021. All of a sudden, they create this new task force that needs to go and take care of all these different things, right? I'm gonna just go ahead and help you guys out a little bit here. Something happened in 2021, right? That was very, very terrible. All right, something that here, I'm gonna just go ahead and share it, ladies and gentlemen. 2021. Breonna Taylor, ladies and gentlemen. The entire raid that took place that eventually took the life of Breonna Taylor was rooted in a gentrification project that was already established by the city, right? One of the things that is taking place in this country is, again, an effort to pretty much displace a lot of Black residents, destroy their neighborhoods because there's profits to be made. There's neighborhoods that they want to get rid of because they can go ahead and redevelop, right? When you had the great white flight of the 70s, white folks moved down to the suburbs. We fast forward to the last 25 years. The city is all of a sudden cool again. Everybody wants to come back to the city. Everybody wants to be in the life of the party. Everybody wants to be at all these things, but there's one problem. There's all these neighborhoods that have become established where Black people live. There's housing projects that are established where Black people live. White folks certainly aren't moving into those, and so developers see an opportunity for growth. They see an opportunity to step in and get these people out of here. But you can't really just show up in neighborhoods and bulldoze them. You got to have a reason why. So let's jump into the conversation of crime and drugs and anything that we can throw at the wall to paint the picture of these are areas that are so out of control that we got to bring in force. We got to create squads and departments and divisions that are going to go out there and make sure that they handle business, because when these neighborhoods and everything become so destitute, we can bring in force and say that these places aren't safe to live. You know, we can, you know, find these properties and condemn them, push people out. We bring in the developers and we build, right? And it doesn't stop there. So one of the things, who remembers last year, right? We kept hearing about Aurora, Colorado, right? We kept hearing about that apartment complex that had been taken over by Venezuelans and folks were being held hostage. Let's go back to that really quick, right? Stay with me, folks. The city of Denver has closed an apartment building in the city's uptown neighborhood because there is no longer heat, hot water, natural gas, or a working fire alarm system. Doesn't it sound very similar to what we were just talking about, the South Shore Apartments, where a company comes and buys it, and all of a sudden there's divestment when it comes to the building? They're not taking care of the sprinkler system. There's no fire extinguishers. The heat is questionable. Maintenance isn't there anymore. Security is gone. They pretty much divest from the building and let it just fall apart. The building is owned by CBZ Management, which is notorious for owning several apartment complexes in the Denver metro area with unsafe living conditions. The Denver Department of Public Health and Environment issued a statement that the building would be closed due to the property owner's neglect. Last year, the city of Aurora drew national attention because of gang activity at apartments owned by CBZ Management. Are you guys seeing what I'm trying to paint here? There's a pattern that's always there, but let's keep it going because we're not done. Let's go to Trinity Flood. Trinity Flood is currently the group that owns this South Shore Chicago building, right? The building is unsecured, which allows non-tenants to access the interior. There has also been increased criminal activity and shootings at the property, which is located across the street from an elementary school. And the current property manager is unable to reassert control over the building. A legal filing from Wells Fargo stated the city has received reports from a tenants' rights group and Alderman's office that the conditions continue to worsen at the property. Understand that this is intentional. It's unclear whether city officials were aware that federal officials were plotting an operation at the property ahead of time, or if they were involved at all in the effort. And now we know, just based on News Nation telling us that they were invited to go along for the ride, that all of this had already been planned ahead of time. And so I want to go even deeper, because it's so crazy how all this crap ties together and how this is a universal thing that is not limited to just Chicago. Now, who remembers a few lives ago where I told you the sad news that my community center is closing, right? So the community center that I ran from 2011 to 2022 at one point was owned by the county, owned and operated by the county. And because of that, the county ensured that the property was taken care of, because my community center was in the apartment complex. The county ensured that the property was taken care of, that maintenance was always taken care of. There was the 1-800 number to call if somebody's pipe burst. Everybody had free internet. The playground was always upkept. We had an issue one time where there wasn't a crosswalk from my community center to the park because there was a street in front of it. We were able to get the county to build us a crosswalk. We had an issue at one point because the street lights weren't working very well. What did you do? You go to the county and cuss everybody out, and before you know it, they got street lights surrounding the entire playground, and the neighborhood is lit. So now when the kids go home at night, it's lit. It's well lit. Everybody can go home. There were lots of regulation with the different activity that took place in that neighborhood. So if you were somebody who ended up with a felony for a violent crime, you could not live in that neighborhood. There's all these different things. There was investment into this neighborhood. There was investment into my center. I was able to build lots of really great relationships, get lots of grants. And like we said before, for those who follow my podcast or who have just followed my journey because you've been with me since I've had this channel, you know, that community center, and specifically the organization that community center set in, my center became the #1 center in all of the United States out of 46 locations based on the work that we were able to do in that center. Now, this is where things changed. In 2021, a new private company came and took over management of that entire property. And I knew from that moment that there were going to be some issues, because during the ribbon cutting for the welcoming of this company, the residents of the neighborhood were not invited. The only people who were at this ribbon cutting were a bunch of rich folks with suits and ties. And so they blocked off the street. They put some chairs out in the parking lot. The chairs were sitting right on top of the crosswalk that I got the county to build, right? And then you started seeing residents who didn't know what was going on. So they start coming out and watching, and they're totally ignored. They can't have the finger foods and the cucumber sandwiches that's on the table for the rich white folks. They can't have none of that stuff, right? And so this new management company steps in. County no longer manages this property. And so I leave in 2022, not because of what was happening with the management. It was just, hey, I've been there 11 years. I think I was able to give everything that I could give. But for my own goals and everything else I needed to do, the kids would need to see me reach all my goals so I could actually say, okay, you know, the benefit that I could give to them is them seeing me be successful in the same realm. I couldn't sacrifice everything I wanted to do and dedicate all of my life to them. And at that same time, I was getting older. They needed somebody younger who could come in and give the same energy I was able to give them for a decade and some change, right? And so I leave in 2022. Not even 2 years after this company takes over, the neighborhood goes down. Why? All of those beautiful services that the county once offered are no longer there. There is no magical 1-800 number to call. There is nobody that you can call to get the, because that crosswalk is faded. The last time I looked, it's been faded. You know, you got to repaint that stuff, right? The kids be running across it all the time and kickball and dodgeball and all that stuff, right? None of that stuff is there. They start changing the regulation of who can come into the neighborhood. They start changing the conversations of security. And then they stop fixing locks that break, because every apartment in that unit had 2 doors you had to get through in order to get in. If you didn't live there, you couldn't get in. You just, you know, you either had a key or you had to get buzzed in. Ain't none of that stuff working. You guys remember those clips of Delonte West? He was the former NBA player who unfortunately has succumbed to addiction issues, right? And every now and then there's a video or two of him that goes viral where he's on the street and, you know, he's going through whatever he's going through. He now hangs out in that same neighborhood, right? And so what ends up happening is the neighborhood, as far as safety, starts to change. The parents don't feel as safe sending their kids to that center anymore. In addition to the fact that there had been some changes with people, and like after I came, my replacement came. My replacement was excellent. Something happened. That replacement was pushed out. They just threw somebody in that role because they just wanted to keep the quota. This is the company now at this point that the center was in, not the neighborhood, right? And one of the things that also took place is the company that managed the neighborhood that my community center was in stopped maintaining a relationship with the community center. They did their thing. Community center, y'all do your own thing. So that that relationship is no longer there. When the company that I once worked for started running into financial problems, they had to start making cuts. And one of the deciding factors as to why there would be cuts would be attendance of these locations. Now, when I left my center, my attendance was about 60 kids every day, and maybe upwards of 60% of those kids were teenagers, which is one that's the hardest group that you can collect and bring into an after school program, because teenagers have agency to do what they want. And so that was one of my strongholds, was we were really good at maintaining teenagers. By the time it got to the company's choice to say, well, we have to start making cuts, attendance was down to like 8 to 11 kids every day. And it wasn't because the program was terrible. It was because parents no longer felt safe bringing their kids to these areas, because now that you got drug dealers all in the neighborhood, there's not really any safety regulations. The company that's running the neighborhood does not care about the livelihood of the neighbors. This is kind of like that step one of what we saw with South Shore Apartments, where they start letting the neighborhood go down. Crime has increased. A lot of the doors are broken. You got people with addiction issues living in the laundry rooms. When I told you guys that I went and took one of my old students to Old Dominion for college a few weeks back, when I dropped their oldest sibling back off because they rolled down with us, I almost hit this random, I'm not going to use the word I want to use, this random skinny white woman that was like 60 pounds that darted in front of my car. I'm like, what the hell? You know, addiction issues. I watched her dart in front of my car and run into another building. And then there was another guy that came from, I'm like, what is going on out here? And so understand that a lot of this is so intentional, right? And so one of the things that takes place with a lot of these properties is that there's an opportunity for wealth to accumulate when you can have these either private equity firms or some of these companies come in and take over these complexes. But in order to take them over, you need them to be dilapidated. You need them to have an increase in crime. You need there to be an increase in drugs. You need there to be a lack of productivity. You need there to be something going down that gets everybody's attention, that jumps back into all of those points that we talked about earlier, where you paint the idea that these people are violent and you use the media to make it look like it's just so out of control there. And then when you got somebody cuckoo like Orange Man, who gives very elementary statements and makes everything, he speaks in absolutes, people buy into it, right? And so to sum all of this up, a lot of this is an effort to continue to gentrify and push people out, because again, there's money to be made. One of the things that takes place, even when we're talking about a place like the South Shore in Chicago. Now, they were just purchased by another company, which is K-Star. And by the way, what's interesting with where my center is, the county has actually just canceled the contract with that company as of September 29th, right? My center is still scheduled to close. The county's going to step in and give them some funding, but it ends in December, and then we're still working through it. But anyway, going back to South Shore Apartments, right? So the company K-Star has bought a lot of property. So they bought South Shore 7,500. They bought this 295 unit in Heather Glen in Valdosta, Georgia, right? They got a property in Arizona. They have 2 additional properties in Chicago. They have 2 additional properties in Georgia, right? Understand, these companies are not buying these properties because they want to make things great for the people living there. This is all just a step to go ahead and set up the next move, because the next thing you have to ask yourself is, well, what is the obsession with a place like, you know, that area in Chicago? Why that spot? Why? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's paint the picture here. Let's really look at things here. Here's the address of where that raid was. What is all of this right here? Look at this. This is the opportunity for prime real estate. This is the opportunity to just, because we zoom out some, well, boy, look at this. There's lots of money to be made here. There's so much that can take place if we start pushing people out and we start developing, because once you just put a few properties up there, then more people say, hey, we're going to do our thing too, right? And before you know it, they find every reason to start displacing. So please understand that a lot of this, they will give us the boogeyman speech. They will tell us that there's drugs, to the point where, oh, somebody spray painted Venezuela on the door, right? First of all, even when you look at the image, the way that they write Venezuela is not even the way that people from Venezuela would write that down as far as how it's pronounced and spelled. Like, they do anything. It's kind of like the white, remember, where's that picture? I always laugh at this picture. I need a little bit of comedic humor for 1 second. Where's that image I like to use? They always, oh yeah, here's my guy right here. You know, they always using something where they can't even do it right. Remember, Blacks rule. He's like, yeah, the Black Lives Matter stuff has gotten so out of control. They went to my driveway and they spray painted this and they knocked my flag over and they said blacks rule. I said, what in the Bart Simpson hell is this? First of all, black people don't even talk like that. And it's so funny. I want to say something, but then I don't want to give it away because then I don't want white folks to catch on to what gives them away. So I'm going to be quiet. But if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And Maverick Lex Cuz just actually said exactly what I was about to say. So use your discernment and go from there. But yeah, they love to try and be us and then act as us, but they can't do it right because no matter how hard they try, they still see us through a very white lens. So they can never execute it properly every single time, right? And they think everybody's stupid. And so I'm going to pause. But again, everything in Chicago, that it is ridiculous. And that's why I was saying, even with everything with the conversations of ICE and immigration, like I said on the last live, there are some fights that additional communities have to kind of stand up for and fight their fight as well. But as black folks, it is not our job to sign up to oppress other groups of folks. So I'm just going to say, for those who are signing up to work for ICE, remember, at some point, they're going to have you going after your own neighborhood. So use that discernment. Don't think that it's only going to be those different communities they go after. You're starting to see it happen to us. That whole National Guard going to Memphis is rooted in, again, the idea of going after black folks. It has nothing to do with immigration. It has nothing to do with violence. They know what they're doing. So for those of you who think that bonus for ICE looks great and you get your student loans forgiven, at some point, you're going to be in your own neighborhood. Give it a minute. All right? Anyway, let me read some comments here. It just, when I saw the image of the little kids with the zip ties, I said, y'all out here just doing anything. So again, like we've said, at this point, the conversation is about community and it's about discernment. And if you are not moving with community in mind, you're moving in the wrong direction. If you're not utilizing your discernment to really think about how things are and thinking about foresight and what's foreseeable, you're moving in the wrong direction, right? So just giving people a heads up. Okay, now I'm going to read some comments and then we'll go from there. All right. Of course, they said it was lagging. Of course, it starts lagging when I start talking some real stuff. That's how it always goes. Let's turn this off. So maybe this will help fix the lagging. Okay. All right. Somebody said they learned something new. That's a lot of oil. Yeah, there's a reason all of a sudden we all of a sudden are worried about Venezuela. And Venezuela is the perfect opportunity for the U.S. to go after because they're underestimating what Venezuela would be able to do. Like we can't keep going to the Middle East anymore because a lot of the Middle Eastern countries are over this stuff, right? Or South Asian countries, they're over it, and they built up forces. We really can't shake the table with Iran like we think we can. We a lot of these people in power are still moving like it's 1989, and it's not. But they're gonna find out. They better stop provoking and poking the bear with some of these places, right? Clean energy has been proven to be better in every way, but greedy white men will kill nations to make an extra dime. And it's ridiculous because we could be in such a great position right now had everybody not fought tooth and nail against the possible changes that could have taken place 20 years ago. But everybody wants to, folks don't want to let go of the old guard. The big oil rigs and fossil fuel industry, they're not giving us that. And they're going to fight us tooth and nail. In the same way, the NRA is always in the way of regulation when it comes to gun control. And I'm talking smart gun control. I'm not saying everybody, you got to take every weapon here, but there's no reason why a random Joe with mental illness gets to go and get an AR-15 because there's no longer background checks or that kind of thing, right? In the same way you got the NRA that gets in the way of any kind of gun regulation, you have the fossil fuel industry getting in the way of all the climate change stuff. That's one of the reasons why when you talk about the EPA and all that stuff getting gutted, or our conversation about what's been happening in Memphis with the data centers, or what's been happening in Louisiana with Cancer Alley, or what's been happening in all of these places where they're building these data centers, or, you know, we just saw the judge say in the state, I don't know what state that was that New York? Where they won't have to regulate the wastewater coming from some of these factories. I can't remember which state it is, but there's always something going on. Money is behind everything. Understand that, right? All right. Let's see. Somebody, okay, that was about the Bronx. Yep. Targeted insurance fraud. Mm-hmm. Yep. By the way, we what's I going to say? And some of this kind of even goes into when we get to for those who are doing the book club. Some of this is also even kind of somewhat referenced in our book, The Color of Money. There's another book, by the way, which I was so busy I wasn't even paying attention. I was reading the wrong book, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is not the book for the book club. There's another book I've been reading. It is called, and this goes back to the conversation of housing. It is called. Okay, book. Where are you at? Sorry. There we go. Why is it? This is so stupid. Hold on. This thing is Plundered, right? It's called Plundered. How racist policies undermine Black home ownership in America, and it is by Bernadette Atuween. Check that book out as well because they do a great job of kind of just going into detail about a few things with that, right? All right, let's keep going. Somebody said, where can the Black residents go now if they keep kicking them out? It's just unfair. They don't care. And that's the worst part. And then what ends up happening, and we're also in a space where, again, homelessness and being unhoused is being criminalized. Look at all the cities who have put in new regulation where you can't sleep on the bench. And then even if that were the case, they put them sharp little specks on the bench so you couldn't lay on them anyway. And how many camping or tent encampments are getting bulldozed and taken over? DC still dealing with a lawsuit where they had the bulldozer go and try to pick up the tent and the man was still in it, right? All kind of stuff. Crazy. And somebody said private equity is a killer. Private equity will be the downfall of a lot of industries. Understand private equity companies, a lot of them are just about profit. They're not about saving these companies. And so we keep seeing it, right? Somebody said lakefront properties. Oh, yeah. Lakefront properties. Thank you, Ms. Cruzen said. It's not downtown, but it's still a great location, right? You know, Chicago's huge, by the way. So, like, yeah. There's all kind of opportunities out there. So all of this is tied together. That's why you just keep, when I say everything works full circle, and we've seen these patterns before, they do this all the time. So it's important that you kind of lock in and just pay attention to what's happening and then always ask questions. And then just, I always say, go get to the origin of everything. There's always a reason behind something. It's all of a sudden obsession with this random apartment building in Chicago that I can tell you right now, Orange Man has never heard of. But you all of a sudden send ICE agents and have this whole operation, and y'all had DHS, Department of Homeland Security, going out there. Oh, it's all rooted in something. So follow that, right? All right, let's shift gears here. I want to talk about Kyren Lacy. All right, let me close a few of these articles out that we've already covered. All right, here we go. Kyren Lacy. Attorney, late LSU wide receiver Kyren Lacy didn't cause fatal accident. Now, if you remember, Kyren Lacy was accused of being the cause of a car accident that killed some folks, and just before the NFL draft, and also 2 days before his court date, he unfortunately took his own life. All right, so that's the context behind this. All right. An attorney for the late Kyren Lacy, the former LSU wide receiver who died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound in April after he was charged with negligent homicide and felony hit and run, said Friday that Lacy's car was nearly far behind the accident at the time of impact. Speaking over surveillance video that caught the December 17, 2024 collision in Louisiana, attorney Matt Ori told Houma, Louisiana TV station TV 10 that Lacy's car was so far behind the collision, it was not visible in the video at the time of the accident. We know from data that Kyren Lacy did in fact pass 4 cars. And before we even get to that, let's go to a fact check really quick because they always have the information wrong. Let me make sure you can see my fact check. You can. All right, fact check really quick. Okay. Wait, hold on. Maybe I wrote it down. Hold on, let me see. Oh, it's on my other thing. Sorry, hold on. Give me 1 sec. Fact check. Yeah. Boom. See it. Don't play somebody else. Hold on 1 second. You gotta fact the articles. All right. Now, this is from an article that's written after the one that we're currently reading. Lacy was also not passing cars on the road when the crash happened, as assumed in the DA's report. A woman from the scene of the crash gave a statement to LSP. However, body cam footage obtained by Ori shows the state trooper instructing the witness to say that she had to brake and harshly dodge Lacy's Charger. And just to give some context to that, because, hey, I went and did the research and found as well, let's go to the video, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, give me 1 second to get that to play. All right, you guys can hear this. Let me know if you can hear or not, and I'll start it over if not.
It's like, you had to slam on the brakes to avoid that charger, and the brakes locked up to avoid that charger. That's.
I ain't scared my connector. I wasn't even going for it. They knew in the back of me. She didn't show what's happening. That's how she called that record. She was running in the back of me. She pulled on the other side.
Mm-hmm. So, but the charger was coming right at you, correct? And that's why you had to slam on your brake, head on with you. So yeah, just make sure you include that, and that's very important because we're trying to locate this charger right now. So just include that in the statement, and I'll read it over, and then I'll be out of here.
Hold on, I'll start it over. You guys are saying you couldn't hear it. I'll play it one more time. All right.
Oh, which one? That you just.
All right, made my way going through that.
Okay, just make sure you add in there that you had to slam on your brakes, and the brakes you had to slam on the brakes to avoid that charger, and the brakes locked up to avoid that charger. That's.
I ain't scared my connector. I wasn't even going for it. They knew in the back of me. She didn't show what's happening. That's how she called that record. She was running in the back of me. She pulled on the other side.
Mm-hmm. So, but the charger was coming right at you, correct? And that's why you had to slam on your brake, the head on with you. So yeah, just make sure you include that, and that's very important because we're trying to locate this charger right now. So just include that in the statement, and I'll read it over, and then I'll be out of here.
Okay, so let's get back to the reading. All right, kids, stay with me. All right, so again, one of the main arguments that was made that he caused this accident. So that's the premise of everything that's been happening, and that video is showing the officer pretty much leading the witness into saying what the officer needs them to say, because police don't like doing no work. So I shouldn't blanket statement, but a lot of them like to cut corners, and when they think that they have somebody, they will do everything to try to make that person be guilty, right? So getting back to the article, all right. So we can skip this whole part about them knowing they passed 4 cars because we've already understood that wasn't. All right. However, he was back in his lane of travel, 92.3 yards back in his lane, behind the car occupying the man that killed the crash. He's 72.6 yards behind the vehicle at the time of impact. Keyword, behind the vehicles. That is not how this story was painted. Never. According to reports, police alleged Lacy crossed a center line in an attempt to pass slower vehicles, which a pickup driver, what? Oh, they got a type. What ain't me? I ain't crazy. It should say which caused a pickup driver to brake and swerve to avoid Lacy's car. Another vehicle then allegedly swerved to avoid the pickup and crossed the center line, crashing head-on with a vehicle containing Herman Hall, 78. Hall later died in the hospital. The video depicts an SUV colliding head-on with another vehicle. Part of the collision is obstructed by a parked vehicle, with the vehicle behind the SUV coming to a stop. Nearly 4 seconds later, a car identified by Ori as one drive by Lacy appears in the camera, slows down and appears to go around the accident. Lacy was later charged with negligent homicide, felony hit and run with death and reckless operation of a vehicle, and surrendered to police in mid-January. On the night of April 12th, 2 days ahead of his scheduled grand jury appearance, Lacy, 24, led authorities on a pursuit before crashing into Spring, Texas. When deputies removed Lacy from the car to take him into custody, they found him with a gunshot wound, and he was pronounced dead on the scene by emergency responders, the Harris County Sheriff said. Lacy, a native of Finbado, I think, Louisiana, caught 58 passes. Okay, we know he was a great football player. He finished his collegiate career with 162 catches for 2,360 yards and 26 touchdowns in 64 games with Louisiana in 2020-2021 season and LSU 2022 through 2024. Largely viewed as an NFL prospect, Lacy's name was not on the list of players invited to the NFL scouting combine when it was released in mid-February, a month after Lacy's arrest. Okay, so let's put some of this into context. Now, some of the things that I've seen people say, I've seen some folks saying, if he knew he was innocent, why would he go and kill himself? Or why would he, lead the police on this speed chase, so on and so forth? I want us to dive into the mindset of somebody who has an NFL dream. I want you to dive into the mindset of am I losing my signal? Am I losing y'all? Something's going on here. Okay, either way. I want you to dive into the mindset of somebody who's built their entire premise, their identity, their dream, what they see themselves as being in the NFL, as getting to that dream where not only do they get paid to do what they love, but they can take care of their family, their mom never has to work again. And they've made that their North Star. That was their high school goal. They did what they needed to do in college. It is everything that they ever asked for. They put in the work. They had an amazing time. They had a great run. They made D1, right? NFL is right there. They're so close to the draft. And then this accident happens. Not only does this accident happen, but here comes the public scrutiny. Here comes the accusations. Here comes this wave of a firestorm that no average person is built to deal with, right? Can we just go into some of the things that a lot of folks were putting out there that he had to deal with, right? So there's this post that kind of went viral way back when, right? This is some guy named Jack Mack. I don't know who he is, some random white man. So and I want you to look at the dates. This is January 10th of 2025, right? LSU standout wide receiver Kyren Lacy wanted on charges of negligent homicide, felony hit and run. What does this person post? And this is somebody who, I don't know who he is, but whatever. And notice that this is a post that ends up having like 1 million impressions. He says, shocking. What does he use? He finds an image of Lacy, you know, when these players celebrate after they scored a touchdown or made a pass and they make some kind of gesture. What does he do? It goes back to what we were talking about in our earlier segment, where paint him to be a violent aggressor and so on and so forth. So his post says, oh, shocking, right? Somehow implicating that this man is violent and supports gun violence. And so now he deserves what comes to him. But no, we don't stop there, because then he decides to double down, right? But then we get to his next post, right? Now, this is the post that gets 1 million views. Kyren Lacy is wanted on homicide charges. I tweet out photo of Kyren Lacy pretending to shoot somebody, called racist. All you can do is laugh. Understand, that's not the only post about a Kyren Lacy that's floating around. For weeks, the internet is tearing this man apart. We're also getting bad intel from the news media that's painted this picture. We have police officers that have coerced witnesses into lying. And so they painted this picture of this man who has done everything. And for somebody like a Kyren, how do you get yourself out of that situation? How do you sway public opinion when everybody's out after you? And then in addition to that, the one thing that you built your life around, and I do have my opinion on Black athletes in sports, but it's inappropriate for this conversation, right? You built your identity and your life around this common goal, and you've just watched it become snatched from you. And not only has it been snatched from you, you have the public on your case. It's snatched, and you will probably likely never get that opportunity again. And you don't know what is next, right? But then it still goes, because now once it comes out that this is all a crock of bull, it's interesting to see how those same aggressors, hold on, wrong one. It's interesting to see how those aggressors all of a sudden get brand new, and then they want to be the victims, right? And then they want to move, and they don't realize that the damage that they put out there, you just can't take it back, right? Somebody had posted, folks were dead ass on this app slandering Kyren Lacy, using his touchdown celebrations as a reason he got in trouble just for him to be innocent, right? And this is in response to the Jack Mack post. Here comes Jack Mack. I apologize for this tweet and want to properly acknowledge that I was wrong. I judged based off of evidence reported and could have waited for further evidence to come out like it did today. Two things I want to say. Thing number one, even in the event that Lacy had caused that accident, to equate a car accident or somebody driving a little too fast or recklessly with that of somebody who has the intention to shoot and kill somebody, those are not equatable offenses. But again, when it comes to Black folks, they put us in the same bucket. They put us in the same bubble because whiteness works that way, and they love to paint us as criminals. And this is their go-to every single time. Anytime something happens to us or that we're a part of, they already have the preconceived notion about what it is. That's why, like I was saying earlier, when you talk about what happened in Chicago, there's tons of Americans who feel that the people in that apartment deserved everything that took place without even knowing who those people are. And that comes from 30, 40, 50, 60 years of institutionalized media that's put out there when it comes to the narratives about Black people and how we're violent and how we do this, and how white people still love to use the stat of, oh, Black people are 13% of the population, but 52% of the crime. That's even a slur that white people use now. I don't know if you've seen it, but they love to say this thing called 1352, right? That's kind of what they think is their coded language when they want to talk about us. 13% of the population, 52% of the crime, where I'm like, again, but let's talk about the percentage of people that are exonerated for crimes that they didn't commit. We're the majority of it. It highlights that there's a flaw in the system. And again, if we want to have that conversation, let's talk about the fact that more than 80% of those who are arrested for child pornography are white men. Anyway, so that's thing number one. Thing number two, like I said, They always think that a simple apology just erases the issue. But here is the thing. Somebody like whatever the Jack guy is, they contribute to something that's already systemic and institutionalized in this country. And when they contribute to that system, when they contribute to that status quo, when they contribute to something that is on a macro scale that affects us, like painting us out to be all violent offenders or so on and so forth, that strips away the humanity of our existence, where people can never feel bad for us. Because again, even when Breonna Taylor was killed, please go back to my initial video that I did on Breonna Taylor. Literally, at least half of the comments paint her to be somebody deserving of what happened to her. And this is why I be whacking somebody like a Candace Owens when y'all be trying to be like, oh, she's coming around. No, let's keep it across the board. Candace Owens was one of the main ones jumping on the Breonna Taylor. She brought it on herself, right? Going back to the Breonna Taylor situation, they even had the wrong guy in the narrative, right? They were trying to associate her with the ex-boyfriend that she wasn't even with and trying to say that that was his apartment and that she was helping him do drugs and sell drugs and blah, 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 and all that other stuff. And the woman literally gets shot and killed in her bed because the police do a no-knock warrant, bust up in the apartment, don't announce themselves. The guy, the boyfriend that ends up also getting shot, shoots at the door because the police didn't announce themselves. He thinks somebody's breaking in. Second Amendment disciples, where are y'all? Any other time you want to be about the Second Amendment and don't tread on me and let's fight against tyranny. But when it comes to us, y'all are silent in the same way that you are silent now as Orange Man is tearing down the country and stripping away everybody's civil rights. All the don't tread on me disciples and Second Amendment disciples are silent. All of the, oh, we need our guns because when the government decides to utilize its force against the people, we're going to be the ones going to stand up for the people. Where y'all at? I can't see y'all. My vision ain't really going too bad, so y'all are nowhere to be found, right? But so they will contribute to a system, and then when they get caught in the wrong, they want to go back to being an individual. Oh, I want to apologize. There's no power behind your apology. The man is dead. There's no coming back from that. And you contributed to the public ostracizing of this man, right? And then you want to paint yourself to be a victim. I was only using what the news provided. The news didn't tell you he shot anybody, but you couldn't wait to go and Google an image of him using a shotgun thing because he was celebrating a touchdown. But you want to use that because there's a narrative that you want to paint. And that's what white people love to do. They love to paint a narrative. They love to go ahead and latch onto everything. And then when something is murky in the water and now they look like a bad person, they want to go back to being individuals. They will contribute to the system that oppresses us. They will contribute to a system that disenfranchises us. They will contribute to a system that criminalizes us, that locks us up, that puts the energy behind private prisons so that people can go and lock up more of us so that more money can be made. They love to jump in behind all that. They are enjoying all of this shit that's happening right now. But then when it's turned back on them, they want to go back to, I'm just an individual. I was just doing what I knew. Oh no. Oh, and that man made all his accounts private and everything else. Y'all play this game. And then you want to be victims. Like, a mess. Right? It's a hypocrisy for me. That's why I don't be entertaining them like that. They don't get a lot of sympathy from me on a lot of things because I'm like, y'all be full of it every single time. Right? You know how many black folks have either died or been arrested or something because white folks be on some bullshit. And then when stuff comes to pass, all they can do is apologize. How many, especially with a lot of these, and this will teach y'all to stop messing with certain folks, especially a lot of these black men who have been exonerated after being accused of either dating or raping white women that they were in relationships with. Because a lot of times these girls get found out that they were with some black guy, dad doesn't approve, and now she claims and calls rape. How many of these men have got exonerated and the only thing the woman can do is give an apology after the man has been incarcerated for however many years, right? It goes back to the same thing we saw with Emmett Till. It goes back to what kicked off the Rosewood riots, or not even riots, the massacres in Rosewood. There is a system that these people contribute to. And then when it's exposed or found out that, no, that's not how it happened, then they want to go back to being individuals, and then they want to cry. And then they want to all of a sudden get you to feel bad for them every single time. It's not how this works. And see, that's what happens when you get the luxury to operate as the standard and you think that everything you do is right and everybody else must be doing something wrong. You can never see the fault in your ways because you've never been challenged to evolve, because you are a part of the mainstream collective population that gets to dictate how the rest of us live, because we have to be collateral to white stupidity in this country, right? And so it's even like with all the people who are now feeling the brunt of this bad policy through the current administration, and everybody wants you to feel bad for them. And it's like, we all told y'all exactly what was going to happen. Every single thing that's happening now, it was right there in your face. And you still said, nope, give us more, because we know somebody else is going to suffer. We know that we're going to get what it is that we want. And really, you don't even know what you want. You just feel empowered with somebody else having less than you. And that's your standard for empowerment. It just shows you that the bar is really low for y'all. Y'all don't have a lot of wants for yourself. What you want is always something that is correlated to somebody else and what they don't have in order for you to feel empowered. That should tell you everything about yourself. Anyway, let me read a few comments here. Oh, God darn sense. All right. Somebody said, why would any black people sign up to be a tool of oppression? Because unfortunately, in our collective, remember, I've been saying a lot about community. There are people in our collective that move with an individual mindset. And a lot of times when you're locked into individual and you don't really care about the well-being of your neighbor, those in collective or in community with you, you think about yourself. And so you don't feel that you have a connection to your own community. So you're helping speed the process of oppressing your own collective. And what you don't realize is tokens get spent. You're next in line. Right. And so, yeah, there's going to be black folks who sign up to go and be ICE this because they still want to hop on this argument of, well, immigrations took all our jobs and blah, 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 blah. And, okay. All right. Because I don't remember a whole lot of y'all in this chat being excited to go pick oranges. But if that's the job that you think you want, there's plenty of them right now. There's lots of fields that are empty right now. Please go and sign up because, we're going to definitely run into an issue in the winter because we don't have any farmers working some of these farms. And so there's going to be a shortage of stuff. So since some of you were so pressed about what you thought other groups were having that you didn't have, go on out there and pick some oranges. So yeah, there are some in the collective who don't care, who don't feel that they have a connection to the community. And then when stuff hits the fan, they always want to come home. Then they need for my people. Think back to Omarosa, right? Orange Man runs for office. What does Omarosa do? Jump right in the mix with Orange Man, and she took him to the black church and all, and he's standing there rocking while the choir is doing this singing and everything, and she did all that trash talking and told us we will bow to Orange Man just for her to get fired. And what did she do? Come back to the community. My people. I had to come back for my people. I'm like, no, see, you were moving as an individual and you found out. Now you want to come back to the community, right? They always, every time, like clockwork. And then she would drop a book. Y'all don't know how bad it was. Well, you certainly seemed to stay until you got kicked out of there. Why didn't you leave on day one? Right? And then everybody always has the idea of, oh, well, no, somebody like her was going to go in and infiltrate the system. And I didn't see no infiltration. I saw her participating. That's what I saw. Anyway. Somebody said, Angel Hagen said, I've seen so many commercials for ICE and a few saying how great the Big Beautiful Bill is. Yeah, it's like, again, $32 billion of investment for ICE. They know that they can get a lot of Americans who are down bad, who just want an opportunity because the system has failed them, and they want their piece of the pie. So they don't mind oppressing somebody else if they think they're going to get a piece of something. And so you're going to see a lot of people, and I guarantee you a lot of people who are signing up are the people who really don't have a whole lot. Or who really does, because even with ICE, there's not even a lot of training. They just dropping people off. Did you guys see the clip? And this was in Maryland. They were trying to detain some guy, right? And the guy was giving the ICE agent a fight for his life. The ICE agent had his gun, or he grabbed the gun from the person that he was trying to detain. He had a holster, but instead he puts the gun right in his pants. I was like, now see, you about to shoot off every man part that you think you still have, right? If you get in a tussle with him. But like, they're not even trained. They just know to be violent and go after everybody. Like this is a wild time. That's all I'll say. And what I always think of is, I think of all of these race riots where white men were deputized, right? Think of Tulsa. One of the main reasons why Tulsa moved so quickly was every white man and older teenage boy, they were deputized. They had the authority to go and move as the police. And ICE is pretty much doing that. It's really honestly not about immigration anything, right? Getting something like ICE to continue to grow and get bigger and bigger, that's creating an additional militant force where once the Orange Man says, well, this is the charge of the direction I need you to go in, ICE will do it. And people are getting their paychecks, so they'll go and do it, right? In addition to what they do with the National Guard, National Guard is a bit more tricky because it's harder to get the National Guard to do things that ICE can do at the moment because there's just certain standards that still exist within the military. But again, with Pete Hegseth in the door, that's going to change anyway. So there's a lot going on. Let's see. Somebody said, yeah, they were slandering his name and the trial didn't happen, but they are journalists. I already told you, all of our journalists are compromised. Look at all the journalists that fought everybody when they kept trying to say Project 2025 wasn't a real thing. You know how many articles from CNN, all these different print journalism magazines that were like, oh, they're trying to fearmonger with Project 2025. Trump says he doesn't know what it is, and so on and so forth. And now, as of last week, you see Trump embracing it, right? Same nonsense. People don't have discernment. They want to play these stupid games, and the media is learning the hard way. They gave a lot of softball, antics to Orange Man. They played into his game because he gave them excellent ratings, some of the highest ratings they've had in years, and they were benefiting. And now, who is he also going after? The media. Now they're feeling it, right? They're starting to have the layoffs and everything else like that. And so it's all going full circle. Everybody's learning the hard way. Everybody's really effing around and finding out right now. All right. Somebody said, and that goes for the liberals that were crying after, who was recently killed. And that was my thing too. That's why I think I said this on the last one. There's no meeting in the middle when it comes to racism for me. You're either here or you're there. And when people see the atrocities, because I think, what's his face? The guy that was married, was that Sean Penn? I think it was Sean Penn who made some statement like, oh, we need all of these different kind of people to have the conversations and keep the dialogue. There are some things that are not a dialogue. Like I said before, my oppression is not for your entertainment. There's no dialogue around that crap. And so again, there's so many people who want to paint themselves to be so understanding, right? So in the know and so reformed and just well thought out that they end up jumping right into the BS because they want to, have a certain image. But it's like, no, now you're endorsing the problem that we're fighting against. And that was kind of the biggest issue I had with the passing of who, because there were so many people who, well, he was a Christian, this, that, and the third. Okay, well, let's really flip it then. There's a lot of white folks who hate this channel, I'm sure. So let me ask, if I start quoting some scripture on here, does that all of a sudden mean they're going to love me also? Will they see me as a brother in Christ? Probably not. So let's cut that crap, ladies and gentlemen. All right? Somebody said the 1% are buying our TV stations, social media, papers, magazines, whatever they can buy. Everything is being bought by larger corporations where they can control the narrative. They can control everything. And you have a lot of people who will buy into it, unfortunately. I want to keep moving. Where are we at here? I was going to talk about Trey Reed because there have been some articles that have been put out, but I don't want to confirm anything until we have confirmation. One of the reports that's out there is that the results of the second private autopsy that was funded by Colin Kaepernick is out. They have some findings. I could not verify those findings anywhere. Everything that I saw was something that was reported by somebody, but I could never find the original source. So we also have to be careful to make sure that we're not just jumping onto everything and reporting it, because when it's all said and done, these conversations don't need enhancements because all of the evidence is right there. So I'm going to wait until we get an official word of what's in that autopsy, if it has been conducted and everything's found, and then we'll talk about it. I just don't want to be irresponsible and rile everybody up, and then what's on there is inaccurate, and that was just something that was put out there because things spread on the internet. So that's the conversation with Trey Reed, but it still doesn't change what I feel, where I do feel that there is some foul play and something does not add up. Because again, the conversation of lynching, it's not to all of a sudden say that we have decorum with the way that we choose to end our lives, but there are certain methods that people use that I think Black folks, we tend to not use. And when it comes to something like lynching, that's not really a thing that's associated with Black people when it comes to taking their lives a lot of times. And even then, I think there also has to be more sensitivity to what people are dealing with in those moments too. I think back to one of the very first YouTube videos I ever made about Tyler Clementi. That was the student who he was a closeted college student. His roommate suspected that he had a boyfriend, right? And so the roommate was shady and planted a hidden camera in the room, and then just let it record. And then Tyler Clementi had a great time with his boo thing. They had them some fun, but unfortunately the roommate got it on video and then spread it and outed Tyler Clementi. And so Tyler Clementi, unfortunately, was like, I don't want to live anymore. And so this is a student that left the campus, went all the way to the Brooklyn Bridge and jumped off. And when you think about the kind of hurt that somebody has to be in, like even the idea of I feel like lynching is something or hanging, that's something that is very well thought out. Like you have to really be down bad to lock into that and say, that's what I'm going to do. Same thing as like jumping off of a bridge, right? If we're using the Tyler Clementi example, that is you left home, you get in the car, you have time to change your mind and you get to the brink and you still haven't changed your mind. Then you get to the edge, right? You have plenty of time to say, I'm tripping, let me go back, but you still do it. And then even as you do it, it's a long way down. It's not like it's instant. And and I know this is really graphic, but we just got to have these honest conversations because there's a lot going on and a lot of people are dealing with a lot of things. And even in that moment with that jump, what if you want to change your mind at that point, but now it's too late? And now you have to also accept the fact, like, and all this is happening in a handful of seconds. Like, there's some real conversations to be had. And I feel that with Trey Reed, because of the circumstances of what had just taken place in that week, centering around the death of you-know-who, and then also the location of the campus, and that there's also been things that have taken place before. And because we've seen certain patterns, and because we've seen many times where Black people mysteriously end up dead, and we're told that they off themselves, and then it comes out later that that wasn't the case. This is the reason why people question. So I'm going to wait until we get the results, and then we'll dive into it. But I did read those results, and I believe them, but I just need confirmation first, because it would be irresponsible to come on here and rile y'all up and then not even be right. All right. Let me read a few comments here. All right. Somebody said, I saw one from Chicago where the ICE agent was getting their ASS kicked. Like I said, these people haven't even been trained. They just give them guns and go out there. And some of these people are so, like, there's also a pocket of Americans who are already mad about life, right? All the privilege in the world, all the opportunity in the world, the system didn't work for them, right? Excuse me. That's how capitalism works. Somebody still has to be at the bottom of the barrel. And that includes white folks. And so a lot of times you get that demographic. This is also in our policing too. You get that demographic of white folks who are mad at the world because the system didn't work for them. Every opportunity that was afforded. And you got to think about how enraging that is. If I'm a working class white American that's making, I don't know, $28,000 a year, and I have 2 or 3 kids and a wife, and I see, I don't know, some smart mouth 37-year-old on YouTube named Calvin Michaels talking trash, and he has a college degree, and he, has a nice job and does all these different things and does music and does film and goes to film festivals and has a podcast and worked for a magazine and has met literally every celebrity he's ever wanted to meet and got to be on the Today Show and done all these different things. Oh, I'm going to feel some kind of way, because based on how the system worked, his ancestors were slaves. They were sharecroppers. He can't probably trace his lineage to the motherland because he doesn't know, he probably hasn't done ancestry yet. His dad, right, never got to go to college. His mother didn't go to college until years later and got an online degree because both his parents ended up having to go to the military for economic opportunities, right? He's Black. He's a male. He has been detained by police before. What else? Where else? He technically didn't grow up with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he didn't have to want for anything. That's a problem because he's not supposed to be doing that well. He's supposed to be some kind of violent offender, and I'm supposed to have more than him. So when I see him on the street and he's trying to tell me what his rights are, I'm going to stump his face in because this little smart mouth, Black whatever, how dare you, right? And so there's like that rage that comes in because a lot of them feel unaccomplished in life, and they're going to take it out on people that they think they're losing something from. The fact that people, especially with the immigrant conversation, I find it interesting because people assume that they have it good. I was like, do you want to trade places with them? That's my question always. Do you want to trade places? Right? You really want to trade places? You want to go and do Uber Eats all day? Rain, sleet, or snow? It's about to be winter. I'm sure doing Uber Eats in Chicago is really fun in January at 2 a.m. Right? I'm sure it's really a great time to go and pick fruit in the fields in the summers when it's 106 degrees. I'm sure that's fun. I'm sure it's really fun now. Have to live a life where you got to be incognito the entire time. You got to consider everything, even when it comes to registering your kids from school. There's so many things to think about. It's just, there's a lot of folks who, unfortunately, their come up is somebody else's downfall. And that's a problem, right? All right. Where are we at here? I saw that too. The twins, less likely. What about those 2 young men in Georgia that allegedly hung themselves? I got to go back and follow up on that story. I haven't followed up on it, but that's another questionable one because for the idea of 2 people to make that choice together, that's a rarity. I know there have been people that make pacts and stuff, but stuff don't be adding up. I'm just saying, right? Let's see. Somebody said, folks be ugly on the inside and want to share their unhappiness. Of course. Okay, let's go to this government shutdown, right? Because this does affect a lot of people, and it's about to be more of a mess. Let me pull up my article here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, yeah, this was the article I ended up pulling up earlier that I was not trying to pull yet. All right, so let's get to this government shutdown. Okay, fact checking. We will accept the cookies today, PBS. Fact checking what politicians are saying about the 2025 government shutdown. All right. I'm gonna fast forward. I'll just go ahead and read it. It's fine. We're here to learn tonight, so let me not cut corners. In 2013, then businessman and reality TV star Donald Trump shared his vision on Fox News about the role of president should play in a shutdown. You have to be nice and be angry and be wild and be cajole and do all sorts of things but you have to get the deal. Now as president, Trump has taken a different approach. After failing to reach a bipartisan agreement, he mocked Democrats by posting an expletive-laced video generated by artificial intelligence and set to a mariachi music, falsely showing U.S. Rep. Hakeem Jeffries wearing a... Okay, this is not bad. Let me get to the points that I need. All right, welcome to 2025 government shutdown. We have fact-checked lawmakers and pundit statements about the government shutdowns for more than a decade. When Congress can't reach a funding agreement, both sides of the political aisle whip up talking points about what shutdown means for the economy, immigration, worker paychecks, disaster response, and services for low-income families. The blame is nearly always placed on the other party. PolitiFact is here to help you cut through the spin. All right, a reminder. Republicans, let me make sure I can still see this right. All right, Republicans control the presidency in both chambers of Congress, but passing legislation to extend government funding at levels would require, under longstanding rules, more than half a dozen Democrats to side with Republicans in order to reach the 60-vote threshold to advance the vote. This gives Democrats some negotiating leverage, which they are seeking to use in the spending fight. Now, I will say that they do have the option to utilize nuclear option, because they've used that before, where they use the nuclear option so they don't have to get the 60 vote majority and they just need 51. They've done it many other times. So I'm not sure why Republicans aren't doing it now if they really want to open up the government. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene brought that up. And you know it's bad when Marjorie Taylor Greene is almost making sense. Okay, social services. Women, infant, and children programs will not be funded. House Speaker Mike Johnson said in remarks on September 29th to reporters. Johnson omits that enrollees will still likely get services, at least initially, but much depends on how long the shutdown lasts. The Agriculture Department shutdown plan said its Women, Infants, and Children's program, which provides food to low-income families, shall continue operations subject to availability of funding. WIC has 6.9 million participants. All right? WIC should be able to continue for at least 1 week. Now, mind you, the shutdown started officially on Wednesday, so that gives us about 3 days, right, before we get to the end of that week. Programs have options to temporarily fill the funding gap, including various USDA resources, state money, and requesting early rebate payments from their contracted infant formula manufacturers. By the way, remember, we've seen a lot of these agencies get their funding pulled and grants canceled as a result of the DOGE cuts that Elon Musk jumped and spearheaded. Remember, Department of Government Efficiency. So we're also in a shutdown where a lot of these agencies don't even have the same cash flow they would have had before the DOGE stuff to even manage with some of this, right? Remember that. Past shutdowns. Back in 2013, Trump said it was the president's job to negotiate and avoid a shutdown. That's an accurate paraphrase of Trump's remarks. Who cares what he said? He lies anyway. It doesn't matter. We're going to skip past that. Healthcare. Republicans are spiking health insurance premiums by 75% for everyday Americans if they don't extend the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies, right? Mostly true. If the Republican-controlled Congress does not extend the Affordable Care Act enhanced subsidies before they expire at the end of the year, enrollees will have to pay more. A KFF analysis of federal data found that the average increase in out-of-pocket coverage for enrollees would be 79%, with the state-by-state average increases ranging from 49% to 195%. The cost increase would come from a combination of insurance premium increases and the disappearance of subsidies rather than the spiking health insurance premiums alone. More than 2 weeks after Clark's statement and after we published the fact check, KFF produced a revised figure for the average increase based on the new data at 114%. Democrats' so-called proposal to a partisan wish list with a $1.5 trillion spending increase tacked on a 4-week funding bill, Johnson claimed. The Republican talking point misses context about the Democrats' proposal. The September 17th proposal latches government funding through October 31st, known as a continuing resolution to some Democratic priorities, including healthcare assistance and limiting Trump's ability to claw back funds previously approved by Congress. The bill calls for permanently extending enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies that were passed in 2021 during COVID-19 pandemic and extended in 2022. Those are set to expire on December 31st. The Democratic bill would revise cuts to Medicaid and other health programs that the Republicans enacted in their signature tax spending legislation. The Democrats' measure would restore funding for public broadcasting that Republicans nixed in July. Remember in the other article, I was trying to read it, and they're like, donate here, PBS, right? They've been pretty much defunded, and includes $320 million for security for lawmakers, the executive branch, and the Supreme Court. Republicans have proposed $88 million in security funding in their resolution bill. The bill also contains mandates for how Trump administration can spend money and would hinder the White House recent attempt to cancel almost $5 billion in foreign aid. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a group that's hawkish on the deficit, said in September 18th press release, the Democrats' proposal in its entirety would add $1.5 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. Now, mind you, the big beautiful bill is already going to add $5.9 trillion, but that's not a part of the conversation anyway. The continuing resolution itself, that part funds the government, would not add $1.5 trillion to the debt, but the bill that Democrats have proposed includes other provisions that would. Chris Towner, the group's policy director, wrote an email. The bill repeals the health spending cuts that were included in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which would cost about $1.1 trillion over a decade to repeal. Towner also said Democrats' provisions to make the enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies permanent would cost about $350 billion over a decade. All right. If enhanced subsidies are not extended, people with insurance through the Affordable Care Act will see their premiums rise twice as much in rural areas. Mostly true. All right. Skip down a little bit just for the sake of time. Analysis by the Century Foundation, a progressive think tank, found that out-of-pocket insurance costs would increase on an average in rural counties from $713 to $1,473, a 107% increase, slightly more than doubling. Comparing rural enrollees' cost increases with people elsewhere amounts to a disproportionately large increase for rural areas, but it's not twice as much. Enrollees in rural counties would see an average of out-of-pockets go from would see out-of-pocket losses of $760 from expiring enhanced subsidies compared to the $624 for all counties and the $593 for urban counties. That's 22% more for rural enrollees compared to all others, and 28% compared to urban enrollees. It's crazy how the very demographic that voted for Orange Man is really feeling the brunt of his policies. All right, government workers. If the government shuts down, members of Congress still get paid. The janitors never get paid. Mostly true. Members of the House and Senate continue to get paid during a shutdown. Federal law says that federal employees get back pay, but the law does not extend that to contractors, a group that includes many janitors. Some private employers with federal contracts may find ways to pay their employees, but there's nothing federal that requires it. FEMA won't be funded during hurricane season. Let's see. Johnson was correct that Congress has not agreed on FEMA funding, but just at the peak of hurricane season. Isn't that great? But the Department of Homeland Security's shutdown procedures plan estimates that 84% of FEMA employees will continue working. Bottom line, hurricanes don't care about politics. FEMA will still respond, but recovery will stall if Congress can't do its job. All right, I'm going to scroll down a little bit for the sake of time. That's everything. Okay. So to go even further, so that's just some of the cuts, right? And really what's happening is Republicans want to go ahead and gut the segment that they want to gut with Medicare and Medicaid, right? Democrats are saying, no, you can't do that. In addition to that, there are subsidies under the Affordable Care Act that the federal government pays out. That's what keeps everybody's premiums at the prices that they're currently at. Republicans are like, no, we want to get rid of that because, again, the Affordable Care Act is really just Obamacare, and we don't want that man to ever have any kind of accolade or anybody to ever thank him, so we're going to get rid of that program. We don't have a replacement for anything under the Affordable Care Act, so yeah, when we get rid of these subsidies, everybody's stuff is going to skyrocket. And so you have that. Democrats are fighting, saying, no, we can't pass a bill until you put that back. And so the pressure that Democrats are sitting under is Republicans have all the stuff they want to cut, and Democrats are like, no, we're not voting for that. We'll shut it down. What did Orange Man decide to do? He said, well, if that's how you all want to move, well, then if you can't pass a budget and the government's going to stay shut down, I guess we have to make more cuts. And the next thing in line, more federal agencies, thousands of layoffs. And again, we have upwards of 1 million plus people that work in the federal government. And now all of those federal employees that are currently furloughed at the moment, there's a possibility that some of them are going to be laid off this week. Because again, Russell Vought has already said, and he's the guy that's over the Office of Management and Budget, has already said, prepare for layoffs, because that's the next move. Since we can't fund the government, rather than having all these federal employees who are not being paid at the moment or who are being furloughed because they normally get their pay on the back end when the government reopens, we're just going to fire these people permanently. And so most likely the agencies that will be affected are the ones that work the most against what it is that something like a Project 2025 wants to focus on. That would be something like the EPA. That would be something like the FDA. That would be something like the USDA. That might even be the Department of Justice, because even though they're under Patel at the moment, there's still some folks that they want to get up out of there. That's the Department of Education, most likely, that they'll just go ahead and finish the job with. USAID is pretty much a wrap, but if there's anything left, that would be them. That would be, what else? Department of Housing, like all of these different agencies that tend to provide services for the people. Those are the things that most likely you're going to see more layoffs. And so now Democrats are in a pickle, because it's like, if we shut the government down, we can save these programs for the average working class American that can't afford healthcare, that depends on something like Medicare, or that depends on the Affordable Care Act. They depend on Medicare, Medicaid, because grandma is in the home, right? And Medicare covers all that. And we can't afford to pay those real bills. And again, like we said, in those rural areas, when we're talking those hospitals, because the majority of the patients are on Medicare, Medicaid, when it comes to healthcare, the hospitals get most of their profits from that system. So when you gut $880 billion out of Medicare, Medicaid, that money is no longer going to those hospitals. Those hospitals run out of money. They can't pay their doctors. And so those hospitals close. And so in those rural areas where the nearest hospital, there's one hospital for a 100-mile radius, when that hospital closes, people have to go further out. So imagine you live in a space, because maybe you're a farmer and you have hundreds of acres of land and you're way out there, and you are doing America a service by providing food for all of us to eat. And unfortunately, your wife has a stroke and you need the ambulance to get there, and they get there, but there's not a hospital for another 2 hours. You got to cross your fingers and pray that your wife makes it. That's the reality. And so for Democrats, unfortunately, it's like, we're going to fight to save this, but if we keep the government shut down, there's a risk that there's hundreds of thousands of federal workers that may lose their jobs, in addition to the 300,000 federal workers that have already lost their jobs as a result of Elon Musk and Doge. And so Democrats are kind of in a pickle where it's like, save everybody and try to keep the programs that are out there, or try and protect those federal workers that work in these agencies that also work to protect the people, right? They're kind of in a catch-22 double-edged sword. So that's where we're at. And so there is a lot of nonsense happening here. And so, again, going back to what I said, Republicans are going to take this to their advantage and say Democrats are the reason everybody's losing everything, and they could easily keep the government open, when in reality, Republicans are the ones that are calling the shots. They own both chambers of the House. They got the Supreme Court. They have the executive branch. And like I said, if they really want to, they can use the nuclear option to open the government. They don't want to, because they need a scapegoat. Midterms are coming up in the event that we still get to vote. Midterms are coming, all right? They need to make sure that Democrats are on the wrong side of history in this, and so they can spin that and say they kept the government shut down. They're the reason why you couldn't go to the national park. They're the reason why you went to the museums and they were closed. They're the reason why SNAP and WIC are going to run out in probably a week or two. They're the reason why, if there's all these other different issues that are taking place, it can't be funded, right? It's going to be them. So remember that, right? It's all a game. So I just want people to stay kind of locked in, right? Because understand, like, the goal, like we've said for the longest, is that they already want to pretty much privatize the federal government anyway. And so even when you see what's happening, right? Look at what Orange Man has just recently done, right? You saw he just froze $2.1 billion for an infrastructure project in Chicago, right? $2.1 billion for Chicago Transit. Just froze that funding. And he blamed the Democrats, right? He said it was 2 projects to improve Chicago's transit system. Because again, Chicago is one of the largest cities, not even just by population, but also landmass in the United States. They want to enhance their transit system. Not anymore. And mind you, the funding for that transit system was not from Orange Man. That was from the Build Back Better bill from the Biden administration. But we're going to cut that. And mind you, when we're talking all the grants and the funding that has been cut, all of this money is money that Congress already voted to approve of before Orange Man came into office. And that's why it was such an issue when Elon came up in there with Doge talking about, we're coming in after the fraud and the waste and this and that. This was all money that was already lined item and stuff that Congress already agreed on. And they individually stripped it away. And because we have a compromised Supreme Court, they allowed it to happen. Right? And it's not just Chicago, because we also saw the same thing happen in New York City, where, again, big infrastructure project with transit, gutted, money pooled. They know exactly what they're doing. So pay attention, please, right? It goes back to what we were saying. yeah, let's go back to this guy, right? Because he's going to be the brunt of a lot of our problems down the road, right? We've talked about him before. But again, Russell Vought, right? This is one of the orchestrators behind Project 2025. Everything that he's wanted to get done, he's been able to do it. And again, because he has now been appointed to the Office of Management and Budget, this is the office that manages all of the federal agencies in regard to what it is that they can spend or what it is that needs to be cut. This helps him to spearhead and get a lot of the things done in Project 2025 that they want to get done. Now, mind you, they're already halfway to their goal with Project 2025. There's actually a website. Do I have it on here? Let's see if I can find it really quick. That even takes you along the journey of the progress that they're making, right? Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Project 2025 tracker. And they tell you everything. Oh, found it already. Huh, the internet does not play any games, right? You have everything you need. Everything. What you need. What you need. All right. Okay, 48%. I rounded up a little bit. All right. 318 total objectives. 34 agencies involved. All right. We are already, let me make sure y'all can see my thing while I'm looking. Okay, y'all can see it. Perfect. All right. I'm not going to read all these things because we've kind of done this before. Overall progress, 118 done, 67 in progress. And look at it, USA or USAID, that's already done. They had 8 objectives. They got all 8 of them. Commodity Futures Trading Commission, they already got that handled. Corporation for Public Broadcasting, that was PBS. They got that handled. White House has 13 objectives. They're almost there. Department of State, all right, 80% along the way. Let's see here. The closed agency list. Oh, okay. These ones, they want to close. All right. All right. The U.S. Department Agency for Global Media, 67% along the way. Department of the Interior, 63% along the way. Department of Justice, 18 objectives, 58% along the way. EPA, 15 objectives. They're more than halfway through. Department of Homeland Security, 35 objectives. Halfway through. I'm not going to read them all, but again, all these different objectives, all these different things that they're going to do here. And they have it here. Let's see. State. Freeze allocation of resources, foreign aid disbursements, and hiring and recruiting decisions. That's already been completed as of, that was last week. Treasury, the Inflation Reduction Act's expansion of the IRS. Remember, the Biden administration was going to hire 80,000 people for the IRS, and that also included the service that would let them help you file your taxes for free, so you don't have to keep getting scammed by some of these online companies that charge you a whole lot. That's done. Don't worry about it. All right. The Department of Homeland Security allows Secret Service officers to serve as law enforcement in the District of Columbia. Hey, that goes back to when the National Guard came. So they got all these different things. CDC, promote fertility awareness-based methods as opposed to contraception for family planning. We know the white population is dying here. We need more white folks, so that's why they're going against everything with birth control. Women, you won't have any agency. You need to just shut up and have those babies. CPB, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, like we said, stop federal funding of NPR and PBS. Housing and urban development, and property appraisal and valuation equity programs. Remember that time we did the video talking about what was happening in Long Island when it came to appraisals and how different it was for black households versus white? And there were agencies that were starting to jump in and make sure they regulated that. That's what this is about, which are set guidelines for producing home appraisals that are free of racial, ethnic, or any form of bias. All that's out of there. Go back to discriminating, because again, Long Island was where Levittown was supposed to be anyway. We weren't supposed to be there to begin with, all right? That's where they're moving with that. So I'm going to stop there. So again, like I said, this goes back to what I've been saying. The goal has been, since 2018, cementing, deregulating, privatizing. That's what's happening with the federal government. You submit all of these new changes and put people in there to make sure that everything is implemented. And then once you get there, you deregulate. That's why the EPA is just gutting everything. And that's how we've gotten all these data centers. That's why the water in Memphis is screwed up, where they got everything going over there. That's why nothing's happening with Cancer Alley in Louisiana. That's why the rules with zoning are changing, where now you can open factories in residential areas again. And it doesn't matter what you do to the groundwater. And again, even with the idea of them wanting to add data centers all around the Great Lakes, because again, those are large bodies of water that, again, with these AI and data centers, they use a lot of water. And we don't get that water back because it evaporates. And so the Great Lakes is the perfect place to set up shop, because there's an abundance of water, overabundance of water, right? All of this is thought out, because once you deregulate, you can make money. You can privatize. So that's why, again, U.S. Postal Service, what did they do? And it stems back even before Project 2025. Go back to the Bush era, right? One of the things they decided to do was, well, in order for the Postal Service to stay in operation, they need to make sure that they can pay the pensions and the retirements of employees even 70 years out from now. People that are not even born yet, they have to make sure that they have cash flow to pay that person's retirement. So when I finally have 4 or 5 kids at this big age of mine, if they all decide that they want to work at the U.S. Postal Service, Yeah, 70 years from now, I should, God willing, I have kids by then. They already have to have a pension and retirement benefits for my children if they decide to work at the U.S. Postal Service. That depletes their cash flow, that depletes their revenue, and now the Postal Service always needs to be bailed out by the federal government, and Congress has to vote on it. So then if they say, no, we're not going to say yes to this, or no, we're not going to fund this, that leaves the opportunity to privatize, because again, the U.S. Postal Service is the only agency or the only service that can deliver to every address in the world. As much as people like UPS or FedEx or what's the other one, DHL, they can't get to every address. So a lot of those rural places in Alaska and all those different folks, USPS can do it. Not everybody can. Privatizing that and thinking of the millions and millions and millions of parcels of mail that are exchanged every day, there is so much money to be made. And see, we're spoiled because, you know, we pay, I forgot how much stamps are. How much are stamps? Like 50, 60 cents now? They used to be like 30. I remember when they were 19. I know the stamps are under $1, right? We pay that little bit to go and mail something. That's it. You know, now if you're doing like bigger packages, it gets to $20 and $30. But who's to say that if they ever privatize the U.S. Postal Service, they say, you know what? It's going to cost $5 to mail a letter now. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but understand, you multiply that by the millions of parcels that will be sent out there, money starts to trickle in. It's the same reason why they want to privatize K-12 funding or K-12 education. There are tens of millions of children that need an education. You can privatize it and make money on it. There's money to be made in this game. And that's the movement of the United States right now, especially with everybody who's in charge. Privatize everything. So like we said, cement, deregulate, privatize for profit. That's the era that we're living in. Every time you see something, conversation of privatizing for profit. When we talk about what happened in Chicago, privatizing for profit, right? So remember that. And I will say this too, because one of the arguments that Republicans have made about the shutdown is, oh, Democrats want to give illegal immigrants your Medicaid and give them free health care. Let's break that down, shall we? There's a law that was passed during the Reagan administration. Reagan, the very beloved Reagan that they love so much, where there was a law that pretty much stated that if anybody goes to the ER, they have to be served. If somebody comes in who's just been shot in the face and they're bleeding out, you can't refuse service to them because this is a life or death situation. Reagan put in a law to kind of regulate that, right? And so that kind of, the funding for that gets covered through Medicaid, Medicare, that kind of thing. And so the narrative has been that illegal immigrants and aliens and all the phrases that they want to use, they're draining the American tax dollars because there's so many that are going to these hospitals and using our funds. And that's what Democrats are trying to do, give them free health care. When in reality, those who are undocumented are not eligible for Medicare, Medicaid to begin with. And so, well, as far as them applying and getting their own element of Medicare, Medicaid. But can we just talk numbers? The percentage of those who fall in that category as far as being undocumented but utilizing U.S. tax dollars for emergency whatever, 0.004%. 0.004%. That's the big hoopla. That's the boogeyman. That's what's been painted. That's what's wrong with the country. That's why you can't buy your house, because 0.004% of funding when it comes to healthcare is going to people who are undocumented. Mind you, that same demographic still puts in $100 billion into the economy through taxes. So it's just like, and it's just to highlight and just show that it's so easy for folks to twist the narrative and run with the boogeyman concept and, again, get people irate, especially in this current era where everything is high, everybody's stretching their dollars, everybody's feeling kind of broke. So when you think that somebody else is getting a little bit more than you want to start getting mad and everybody's public enemy number one, and it becomes easier to latch into the idea that they're the reason why this, that, and the third. And I'm like, well, I want you to put yourself in those shoes and you go ahead and be the doctor, right? And if some woman comes in and she's having a difficult pregnancy and it's life or death, because y'all are so pro-life around here, and if somebody's not helped both the baby and the mother die, are you going to let them die because there's a piece of paper that you don't think they have, and because of that they're undeserving? I just need people to understand that humane aspect of things. When you start spending too much time worried about what other people have that you don't, or what you think they're supposed to have, or who's deserving of living, we've lost the plot. That's all I'm saying. Okay, we're going to pause. I'm going to read some comments, and then we'll shift over to some stories that are a little bit happier. Anyway. Somebody said, but you got a 400-year head start. That goes back to that scenario I was given, right? The ones whose life ain't where it needs to be, and they're mad at everybody else. It's the black folks, it's the immigrants, it's the this, it's the terrorists, it's ISIS, it's Osama bin Laden, it's the this, it's everybody, everything. You had a 400-year head start, had systems that worked in your favor. You got 1 million government handouts. You got the New Deal. You got the GI Bill. You got the Social Security. We couldn't even get Social Security as black folks when it first came out. Everything under the sun. Great Depression came. They made sure y'all were good. And stuff still didn't work out for you. And somehow it's my fault. It's my fault. And so, yeah, apparently lazy, unemployed, living in their mom's basement me, because that's what they would assume. Because anytime the racist people come in my comment section, the first thing they always tell me is to get a job. And I'm like, I've always had a job. since I, once I started working with the kids, I've always had a job. But okay. But again, they got to feel important. So there's that. Somebody said, I'm happy that Dems are holding the line for now. Let's not will it into existence for them to give up. And it stresses me because we don't have the best people in charge on that side either. I'm not a fan of Hakeem Jeffries, and I'm tired of Chuck Schumer. And them, they're not people I'm really crazy over because I've seen them cave too many times on a lot of things. But we'll see how it goes. Is Elon Musk still in office? No. Once Elon got his check, Sarah, Elon went back to he needed to go back to Tesla because Tesla was losing money. They were about to oust him out of there. So, he's been able to go back and reline his pockets, and he's now crossed the $500 billion threshold of wealth. He's not worried about the government anymore. He's gotten his cut. He's gotten his grants. He's gotten his support from the federal government. All that fraud and waste that he was going after, none of that was ever found. Nobody was ever prosecuted. Nothing was ever changed. We just watched people lose their jobs. And now we have all these agencies that are compromised. And now they got to go back and rehire people that they let go of because some of these agencies can't function. But even in that same conversation, they want some of these agencies to not be able to function so that they can say, see, waste and fraud, they can't even get the job done. So let's go ahead and privatize and we'll take it over. Somebody said, I feel bad for, or Angela Crawley said, I feel bad for our children. They should not see these types of people in leadership as something to aspire to be. Shaking my head, right? Crazy. I think one of the things that really stressed me out when all this first happened, especially with the Department of Education bit, is all of the, I'm really one that pushes the conversation of education. Like, especially with my kids, I was like, I want all of y'all to go to college. But if you don't go to college, I just need you to have a plan. Pushing college, only to watch the Department of Education get gutted. And then we don't really know how FAFSA works anymore. Pell Grants are going. And so it's even harder for some of these same kids I work with to get the same opportunities as kids from just 5 or 6 years ago that were able to go and get their education. All because of some stupidity. It's not even because they did anything wrong. The system just changed and worked against them in real time. Crazy. Somebody said, Python Beauty said, we tried to warn folks. We tried. I tried. Y'all were calling me all kind of Democrat shills and you giving too many excuses for Kamala. And she said she wasn't going to do nothing for black folks. And I kept trying to say, I hear all of that. But if this is all that's on the table right now, I think we might want to focus on, because there's a real possibility that they're going to, fear mongering. Orange Man said he didn't know about no Project 2025. And I'm like, this man done lied more than 20,000 times. What makes you think he's going to tell the truth now? Especially after he just got 34 convictions. Whatever. We got to keep moving on. I don't have time to sit in that pocket because we got to get to solutions. So I'm not even going to fight y'all no more. It is what it is. I just hope everybody has learned in this moment. And when if we get the opportunity to make a choice again, people use their discernment and think of community next time and not themselves or not the vengeance that they have for other groups of people. All right. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is just thriving. And y'all keep seeing all the countries that we're in competition with just building up the infrastructure and transit this and clean energy and housing this and free college and free healthcare. And we fighting over scraps. We're fighting over the right to who can be the brokest. Oh, my God. Make it make sense. All right. As far as Diddy. So we know Diddy has been sentenced to 50 months, which would equate to 4 years and 2 months. He'd also get a $500,000 fine and 5 years supervised release. I don't have a whole lot to really give here on Diddy. I think the choices that you make, the people you surround yourself with, the things that you allow, the people in your camp that allow things to happen, and when you don't have people that check you on your nonsense, you become collateral to your decisions sometimes, right? And what was interesting is even the piece where they were saying he already had a speaking engagement already scheduled for next week. I'm like, you ain't even been sentenced yet. I said, okay, folks be moving like they're invincible. All I'll say is this. Please do not use Diddy as your speaking point for the system taking one of us down. Because what ends up happening is that seems to only be a talking point when it comes to celebrities, people who entertain, and it's or sometimes athletes. And a lot of times when you've seen how these people move, they never really do anything for the collective. We've talked about Diddy many times on this channel, even before he got in trouble. I had dragged that man so much when it comes to how many people he screwed over, how many people are broke or everything else, right? We've had those conversations. And this is not to paint him to be a villain or anything, but it's also to not paint him to be Fred Hampton. Because one of the things even his team said was he was a civil rights leader. I said, excuse me? If Diddy is a civil rights leader, then I'm gone. Well, I don't like Gandhi. He's a bad person. Never mind. If he's a civil rights leader, then I'm Patrice Lumumba. Because what? I don't even consider myself a civil rights anything. I think I just come on here and give you conversation and try to research and share with y'all. But the way that they play in our faces sometimes, and again, it kind of goes back to that conversation of how people will latch on to coming home when they're in trouble. Like, the only political thing I've ever seen Diddy really do, I know he was a part of the Vote or Die campaign. Yes, lovely, lovely. And I know he initially at some point kind of was pushing the Black Party before the 2020 election. Other than that, I didn't see a lot. And it's not to take away, because maybe there is some stuff that he did, but it's interesting how they do that. Because I keep seeing this pattern with folks that get in trouble, and then some of them do things for optics. They go and do a back to school drive, do a backpack drive, do some photo ops and stuff before the court case. And then all of a sudden, everybody wants to say this person is for the people. And I'm like, them contracts don't look like they're for the people. Them business plans don't look like they're for the people. Then people never having their publishing for all those years didn't look like it was for the people until he started to know that he was probably going to be in trouble. So there's that. And then even with the statements from the defense, they said, sometimes he did hit the woman that he loved. He loved this. I said, okay. And honestly, even with images of him crying, I'm like, you really got a slap on the wrist. They're really letting you off here because he's probably going to do about 2 years, right? And so I just found it interesting that even that took him down. I was like, do you realize had you got those RICO convictions, you weren't going to be getting out at all? And I'm like, you got 4 years. They're probably, like I said, he'll probably get 2 years plus time served. He'll be out of there by the end of 2027. So interesting. There are people that had longer prison sentences for having an ounce of crack, right? That's all I'll say. And I have my critiques of the prison industrial complex and the judicial system. But if we're going to use the conversation to highlight the flaws in the system, can we use the people that don't exploit that system and think that they can buy their way out of it? That's all I'm saying, right? You got to stop worshiping wealth. You got to stop worshiping celebrities and all of a sudden using them as they're not the spokespersons for our community, if you haven't noticed at this point. Even a lot of the folks who I consider to be agitators and agents of chaos that really got in the way during the last 2 elections, a lot of them are silent at the moment. You ain't hear nothing from them. Everything that's happening under the sun, they had nothing to say. I haven't heard a whole lot about what happened in Chicago. Nothing to say. I don't hear anything about the cancellation of Pell Grants for Black students. I have nothing to say. All right, they show up right when it's time for early voting, and all of a sudden they want to lead the charge. And there's grassroots organizations that have already been doing the work, and instead of partnering with them, they want to be the face of something, and they start trying to lead a movement, and then it fizzles out, and they go back to their lovely, wealthy lives, and then we're still here trying to iron things out. And then y'all talking about y'all should have gave that person an apology. For what? They didn't do anything. 2 pages. All right. I also see white folks are mad because Bad Bunny's doing a halftime show. I'll say this. It's interesting to see how many people didn't realize that Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, and that's technically the United States, which is why when you fly to Puerto Rico, you don't need a passport, right? It's just interesting. Honestly, I'm not pressed, so I'm enjoying this. I hope he does every song in Spanish. And I hope Spanish folks, they start speaking fast where you can't even make it out. Like for those of us who think we have a working knowledge of Spanish, we always think we do until we actually got to talk to somebody. And they start rapido. I'm like, wait, hold on, slow down. Like I told y'all that time, I had this box, right? My dad was gonna mail me all of our home videos. This is 2012, so he mails me this box of all our home videos. He wanted me to turn it into DVDs because these are like the tapes and the cassettes. And so at the time that the box came, I was in Myrtle Beach for a company conference. I was in Myrtle Beach. So the box came. I don't know what happened to it. By the time I got back from Myrtle Beach, the box was never found again. Most of my neighbors at my old place, this is not the, if you remember when I used to do the videos and I had the posters on the wall, it was that place, right? This is now my 4th place I'm living in, but that was the first place I was living on my own, right? And so I was going neighbor to neighbor trying to speak that Spanish. La grande caja es mi. O con tu vivar la caja grande. It's me. I don't know what it had me sounding like what's her face on Bridesmaids, where she's like, and speaking of Consuelo, you know, Lillian and I, we took Spanish class together, and so I just want to say right here in front of everybody, gracias por vivar en la casa, en la escuela y mercada. I forgot how it goes, but that's what I was sounding like. So yeah, I hope he sings everything in Spanish. I know he's Puerto Rican, but I hope they bring out sombreros. I hope mariachi bands come out. I hope, you know what? Even the I will vote for Donald. Bring them out too. I know they don't got the same politics, but let them come out and get a number into. I want all of them on the stage just so I can sit back and enjoy it, because I know it's gonna piss off that demographic. I want them to come out there and have a time. I want there to be a Selena hologram. Well, a chico del apartamento 512. Like, I want all of that. I want all of that on the stage. Like, let's go for it. You call up Gloria Estefan, get on your feet. You know, make it happen. Like, bring them out. You can have a Celia Cruz tribute. I want all of it, right? Even J-Lo can come back out, okay? Yeah, she gonna do on the floor. You know, she got on the floor on deck all the time. You can come out and do on the floor. Bring out Ricky Martin. Just bring out the whole Latin diaspora. Bring them all out, right? Ricky Martin, he can do Living La Vida Loca. Mark Anthony, he can do the tell me, what's it? Tell me, baby girl, because I need to know. And he come and do that. Who else? I'm skipping some. Who am I missing, folks? Just bring them all out. I want all of it. All of it. Go hard too. And Shakira, yeah, no. I want all of them, right? Bring her out. Beyonce can come out and do the Spanish songs off of B-Day. I forgot how they sing Irreplaceable in Spanish, but they can do that. You know, Janet got a Spanish version of Come Back to Me. Vuelve a mí. Oh, that was off key. Vuelve a mí. I don't know the rest of the part, but Vuelve a mí. Okay? Right? I think Michael Jackson has a Spanish version of I Can't Stop Loving You. He needs to come and do that. Daddy Yankee's going to do Gasolina. Gasolina. I'm going to be like, just having a time. That's, just because I know it's pissing people off. Bring it all out. Bring out Dora the Explorer for the kids. Right? Remember the puzzle place? You can bring out Kiki. Remember how my name is Kiki? And did you all know I can speak to you in English and a million Spanish? Whatever it was. All of them, bring them all out. Okay? But you know, it's crazy. They were saying how Christy Nome was like, Ice will be at the Super Bowl. I was like, and it was, what was so wild is when I read that Bad Bunny was doing it, I was telling Whitney, I was like, you know what, watch, they can probably bring Ice to the Super Bowl. If they don't do that, they're gonna bring him to the rehearsals. They're gonna have to, and knowing how Trump moves, he'd probably have Ice show up during the middle of the halftime, so it'll be dancers getting yanked off the stage while they're performing. Like, I see it already. Crazy. Y'all are so pressed. It's just stupid. And so my thing is, if you didn't want Puerto Ricans doing the halftime show, you shouldn't have took over Puerto Rico. You should have left them as is. But instead, the United States decided to annex it and make it a territory and then neglect it. And now you're mad because there are Puerto Ricans that are here. It's a part of the United States. It's the same thing when it comes to like Hawaii. Nobody told you guys to go and overthrow their kingdom back in 1893 and then annex it into the United States in 1898 and then let it become a state later on in the 20th century. Don't be mad because you went over into all these places, Guam, Samoa, Virgin Islands, and you take over all these spaces, and then you get mad at the people that are living there that now have the benefits of being an American because they don't fit the description of what you want them to look like. That's the problem that you all signed up for, so enjoy it. Bask in what it is that you have created. So I will be enjoying Bad Bunny at the halftime show. I don't know none of his music, but I'm gonna learn something. I'm gonna be on what's this? Duolingo. I'm gonna be learning it, right? Hot freaking mess. So stupid. And watch it be the most viewed halftime show ever because they forgot that he's a very global artist. Very global. They are gonna have them a time. Love to see it. I just love it because it's pissing people off. That's what I'm enjoying. Plus, I just knew it was gonna be like some random like right-wing redneck country artist that you folks only good for cleaning my boots kind of artist. So I was delightfully surprised when I saw Bad Bunny. I said, oh, in this climate? Oh, great. Let's do it. Can't wait. All right, so y'all give me some Bad Bunny songs to look into because I don't know his catalog. You know, actually, Janet, you can come out too because Janet got made for now with Daddy Yankee and she got a Spanish version that went to #1 in Mexico. So Janet, this is your opportunity to have a redo from 04. I know we said we'd move on, but you know what? Made for now, not tomorrow. Anyway, okay, moving on. I didn't get to talk about this last week, but there was a video that had gone viral where, again, there's now this obsession where people want to go and provoke and agitate Black spaces because they want to debate. And so some of you may have seen this picture. Let me pull it up. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's see if I can pull this up. Did I just delete what I needed? Oh, here it goes. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's close this one out. So some of you may have seen this picture. This was coming from Tennessee State University. And there were two individuals who show up to the campus. Now, mind you, TSU is an HBCU. It actually was on the list of schools I was going to apply to when I was going to, in high school. It was on the list, but then I forgot you had to pay all the money, so I only ended up applying to Morehouse and Howard and then University of Washington because my parents were like, you need to pick one school that's still in your home state. Told that story before, so I won't tell it again. But anyway, TSU is an HBCU. Now, remember, TSU is also an HBCU that has been grossly underfunded, and we've covered that a few times on this live, where there is $2.1 billion that did not go to this institution. And when the students and the faculty in the school and the school board said, you guys need to give us what's owed to us, the state of Tennessee decided to go and compromise the board and put some puppets in there and get everybody to shut up, right? So folks at TSU already got enough they're trying to work through. So then we, as a result of what's happened, and this isn't even just tied to Charlie Kirk because they've been doing this for the longest, you have lots of people who like to be agitators, and they show up into Black spaces, and they have this obsession with wanting everybody to debate them, right? And so they come on here, DEI should be illegal. Very rich right now, especially in an era where we just watched 300,000 Black women deal with what they have to deal with as far as losing their jobs in this economy, right? Very rich, especially when DEI benefits white women the most. These are your girlfriend's jobs should be illegal is what you're out here saying. But again, these are individuals who also don't care about their own women, because one thing I've told you before is white people don't move and live in a space of community. They move in a space of individualism, and the only time they come together is when it's time to be racist. It's probably one of the reasons Taylor Swift is going to sell 3 million copies of her first album. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so yeah, they come with this DEI should be illegal, deport all illegals now, let's talk, blah, 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 blah. They come on this campus. The students are not having it with them. So they end up being escorted off the campus by the campus police. And then what do? They do the same thing that we just said the guy that was going after the LSU player that unfortunately took his own life did, right? They go back to being individuals and, oh, woe is me, everybody's after us, right? They come here because they're endorsing a status quo and a system that they stand behind on a macro scale. They're endorsing an action that affects people collectively, that affects different populations of people. They're endorsing a system here, DEI, that would disproportionately, if we gut it and get rid of it, push Black people out of the opportunity spaces when it comes to fair job employment, right? There's a whole fair jobs market and a whole agency to make sure that there's fair job practices and everything else like that, right? They're endorsing that as a system. The whole idea of deport all illegals now, that's endorsing as a system. So then when the students start pushing them out, when they get escorted, because them students were not having it, and some of them were refuting and clapping back and telling them facts, they're walking with the phone, we're being attacked for using our freedom of speech. Nobody wants to debate us. We don't feel safe. Wow, these people are very, very angry. And what I loved about the students at TSU is there was no violence, because honestly, I would have threw a brick. But the students also know that had there been violence, that would give an opportunity for somebody like Orange Man to say, oh, TSU is dangerous. Let's defund and pull any funding from federal funding. And if they're not getting any federal funding, we'll pull funding from the state of Tennessee to ensure that funding doesn't go to that school. Or let's send the National Guard to TSU. Oh, let's send the National Guard or whoever else to all the HBCUs. And let's go ahead and send ICE too, because some of the largest populations of immigrants are at HBCUs anyway. Let's send ICE over there too. They would have done all of that. So I love it for you guys at TSU that you had the discernment to understand exactly what they were trying to do. They wanted one of y'all to bust them in the back of the face. I would have done it. No, I'm just kidding. But they wanted y'all to, they wanted somebody to hit somebody. They wanted somebody to flip the table over. They wanted, especially as white men, they wanted to come back with some kind of scar, some kind of anything. Because now that can infuriate, why can I not talk? Infuriate everybody who believes what they believe. And most likely what would have happened next is you're going to have more agitators come to the campus, and it starts to become a pattern until at some point there's some kind of violence that takes place. And once that violence takes place, it justifies orange man, our policing system, everybody to jump in the mix and all of a sudden say this place is out of control. You got to think back to like Kent State massacre back during the Vietnam protest. If they did that to white folks, please understand they have no problem doing it to us. No problem. They already think we're not supposed to be getting an education. They already think that us getting an education, we're stealing something from them. And what I find so funny, especially when it comes to HBCU, they tell us that we're taking their seats when we go to majority white institutions. So then when we go to our own institutions, mind our business, stay in our wonderful black pockets and just have our own little community and be just having us a good time. They still see a problem with it. Well, let's go over there and bother them. And the thing that's interesting to me is there's this obsession with wanting to debate us. You don't get to go into somebody else's space and demand what it is that you want them to do because you're not supposed to be there in the first place. And again, my livelihood is not up for your debate. My livelihood is not a spectator sport for you to sit here and entertain because at the end of the day, none of this really affects their lives anyway. This is all a joke to them, right? And so I'm just like, you got so much going on, right? You don't get to invade our space and then make demands. And so, like, wrap it up. And they have this obsession with debating. Even going back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. When her and Jasmine Crockett had that falling out, what was the one thing Marjorie Taylor Greene said to her before Jasmine clapped back with the bleach blonde, whatever she said, right? Debate me. You're not intelligent enough. Debate me. I'm like, Marjorie, Jasmine has a whole JD. Jasmine has not only completed undergrad, but went and got a terminal degree. What do you have? Nothing. But then, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be nice tonight. All right? So yeah, but again, debate me. They internally have convinced themselves that they're smarter than the rest of us. And so they love to come here with whatever viewpoint that they're never going to change their mindset on. They don't want to hear what it is that you have to say. They're going to use straw man arguments and talking points. And then they understand that most likely if these are college students, the college students are going to be emotional because they're still young. They're still getting their foot wet or still getting their footing. They're still understanding life as they know it coming into adulthood. And so a lot of times they love to get into that space and get somebody flustered where they can't get their ideas out. And then this is when they try to swarm in. Then they make their video content. They only showcase the moments where they think they're winning the argument. And then they post it on YouTube to see. And it says, black liberal gets demolished by, whatever. Happens all the time. People love to come in our spaces and underestimate our intelligence. It's like when Rand Paul went to Howard that time. Howard, of all places, currently, I think, ranked number 2 behind Spelman as top HBCUs, and go to the business school, which, again, is, I think, a top-ranked business school in the nation, not even just for HBCUs, but just in general, and then assume that those students didn't know that Martin Luther King at one point was a Republican. I bet you all didn't know that Martin Luther King was Republican. Oh, you did? You know who else was Republican? I bet you didn't know this one. Abraham Lincoln. They underestimate us, so it's almost hysterical. All right. This energy here, these are 2 idiots that think they're smarter than everybody on that campus, and they couldn't wait to have their moment, but it wasn't given to them. So for white folks, understand, we're not debating you. You're not getting our attention. Go and find something to do. Go and raise your kids to not be school shooters and mass shooters. Go and raise your boys to stop being insecure and passing themselves off as alpha males and doing everything to strip away the rights from women, as well as beating on them. Go and teach your children to have decency, right? Go do something else. There's other things you need to focus on. Take care of the members of your family who have opioid addictions, right? Take care of the people who feel like life isn't working for them because somebody else took their spot. Go tell them to read a book and apply like everybody else. That's where your focus needs to be. Anyway, let's see. What else do I have here? By the way, I just want to show you a clip because, again, we do have some elections coming up, but I just want you to know what it is that we're dealing with here. All right, let me go to this clip.
I'm sorry?
How important do you think black and Hispanic voters are?
Okay, next question.
I'm going to stop right there because it's not even that important. But now, that is somebody who was running for the governor of New Jersey. Now, he just pretty much told y'all the black vote, the Latino vote, he does not care about. Remember that. That's the energy a lot of them have. And so as we come into these elections, like I said, some of you guys have made the choice to say, I'm done with politics. This is actually the time to lock in. This is exactly what they want you to do. To stop caring and just not, because my thing is, and this is just me, but if you don't like a way that the system is working, but you're not actively doing anything to change the system, And then even when there are some moments and instances where there is some leverage that you can utilize to work in your favor while you try to combat that system, you choose not to participate in that either, well, then the system just does this thing on you. So even people who did not vote in this election, you're still feeling the brunt of everything that's happening. So my thing is, you might as well go and just check the box, right? It might make a difference, because even when it comes to voting, it's not even about, the amount of voters. Really, all you're really fighting and competing for is that margin of error. That's really all we need to get a lot of this nonsense out of there, is just to overcome the margin of error, right? That's really the move at the moment. A lot of these elections that have been lost by those who wanted to make life better for everybody and weren't just married into corporate greed and so on and so forth, a lot of them lose by the margin of error. That margin of error could have had a different outcome had there just been a few more people who said, you know what, I hate this whole system. I don't like how none of this works, but you know what? I got to think of grandma. I got to make sure grandma's going to have enough in her retirement. I got to think of my little sister's children that were just born. I got to make sure that they're going to have Head Start. I got to make sure that we're not going to get some loser like a Pete Hegseth who wants to go to war so bad that my livelihood and my safety may be compromised because you got an idiot in charge of the military, to the point where the Department of Defense is now called the Department of War. They're literally ready to start something. Those are the things I just want people to think about. Anyway, I won't get on my soapbox, but anyway, so just a few elections to think about. People in Texas, District 18 on November 4th, you all have an election. Tennessee, District number 7 on December 2nd, you all have an election. New Jersey, your gubernatorial race with that same man who already said the black vote, he ain't worried about. New Jersey, Latino, he ain't worried about it. Next question, y'all aren't even worth an answer to me. That election is on November 4th, and it's a very close election, by the way, according to what the polls are saying. I know we don't really latch into polls, but if that's truth, then everything we've been saying on this channel is true. White folks haven't been mad enough about what's happening in the country, and they're still fine to continue with the same kind of nonsense. So they haven't been shaken enough, which means that we're still in this ride for a bit longer in regards to Orange Man and his regime and whatever else is happening. White America's still not outraged enough if this poll is neck and neck, according to what they're saying with New Jersey. So New Jersey, it's important that you all get out there. Right? Virginia, you guys have a gubernatorial race as well on November 4th. We already told you about Winsome Sears, right? That's the lady with the AR-15 from Jamaica who, again, just because she looked like us does not mean she's here for us. She, for the entire time that she was lieutenant governor, signed off on every oppressive policy that works against black folks. Her job is to be a mouthpiece for white supremacy. Don't think that she is one of us. She is not. Right? She is now running for governor. And what works in her benefit is because she was already lieutenant governor, she does have a rapport with Virginia voters that put her in the first time. And so there's a strong possibility that she may win. So Virginia, get active. Don't get comfortable. Right? There's also a race for your lieutenant governor on November 4th. Why does lieutenant governor matter? Well, look at Winsome Sears. She's currently the lieutenant governor of Virginia. Had she not been the lieutenant governor of Virginia and she ran as governor right now, she wouldn't have a shot in this race. Nobody would have taken her seriously. But because that lieutenant governor position has given her some leverage with voters, and they've seen some of the policies that they want to stand behind, like gutting all the CRT stuff in the schools or whatever else they want to fight about, they feel like, okay, she's not one of us, but she's for one of us. So we'll vote for her as long as she continues to work for us, right? Had she not been in that position, it wouldn't be a thing. So even that lieutenant governor position is important. State of Georgia, Public Service Commission. You guys have an election on November 4th. Why does that matter? That's the commission that regulates all of your utilities and the prices. You know, everybody's stuff is going up. I know right now I'm stressing because car insurance. I was like, what the heck? My car insurance is going from $149 to $278. I said, what? I have never been in a car accident. Knock on wood. Thank you, God. I have no points on my license. I have been a loyal customer with the same insurance company since I started driving. Why is my thing going up to $278? I don't even drive that much. I work from home half the week. That's not the same. That's insurance, private company. But again, your utilities, water, electricity, gas, all that stuff. So there's a commission that's voting on that. So November 4th. Again, New Jersey, General Assembly election, also on November 4th. And the last one I'll do is, again, Virginia, your House of Delegation. Again, November 4th. So make sure to lock in. Pay attention to what's happening. Again, your vote is not a marriage to anybody, right? Your vote isn't even a public record. Nobody's even gonna know who you voted for. They know when you're registered, but it doesn't show who you voted. Just go and do it. Get over yourself and consider the community. Let your convictions show you and have you consider that your decision may affect the plight of somebody else, whether good or bad. Let that be your motivation. All right? All right, let's read some comments. Oh, damn, we've been on here for 3 hours? Oh, I need to wrap this up. All right. Somebody said we can't go onto their campus full of high energy and then leave intact. Yeah, the way we get dragged up out of there, a mess. Somebody said they are the weakest debater. Yeah, a lot of times they don't, because I will say, even when it comes to race, I think what a lot of that demographic underestimates is they don't realize that when you're on the receiving end of an oppressive anything, it makes you research the reasons as to why those things exist. And when you find the reasons as to why, then you find their origins, and then you find who benefits from those origins, and you find out why those origins and those benefits make people behave the way that they do. So you constantly spend your time researching and evolving and looking into things. So I think I can comfortably say that if you've been with me since day one, when I was still in I think my very first YouTube video was actually made in the bathroom in my parents' house because I was 22. Downstairs, it's just against a white wall. That's the one against Bethany Storley. If you've been with me since that day, I'm sure you've seen our conversations evolve around politics and race because I'm constantly doing the work. I'm not still with the same mindset I had when I started the channel because you have to keep working on yourself. When you're not on that receiving end, you don't have to consider any of that. So you just go on with the preconceived notion that's already, blinded by a lens of whiteness, and you think you know everything, and then they go out there and get embarrassed all the time, right? So there's that. Somebody said, can update the world on political opinions every month, but won't check a box. That's just, and they make it easy. Well, I don't know how mail-in voting is going to be right now with Orange Man, Charles, but you literally just that's it. That's it. That's all it is. I just need us to start looking at it. That's it, right? You want to teach a party a lesson, you teach them a lesson once they get in office, right? And if they haven't done whatever they do, then you vote them out. You don't put them back in the next time. That's the lesson right there, right? Don't let politics do you, because it will do you if you don't do it, all right? Calvin, what do we say to friends who just don't believe that voting makes a difference? You know, the people who think both sides are equally evil. At this point, tell them to just watch the news. We don't even have to dissect things anymore because now it's just so obvious that what's affecting us. I always say find something that directly affects somebody in their moment and tie it back to those politics. So an easy thing here, like for the DMV and here in DC, is there's so many people who have lost their jobs because of the federal layoffs. And there's a lot of people right now trying to find jobs. And unfortunately, because DC is a very federal government heavy oriented city, and even if you don't work for the federal government, it's likely that one of the companies you work for has a contract with the federal government. If those contracts have been canceled, those jobs are also, out of whack. And so there's a lot of people who have watched their friends lose their jobs, or their parents lose their job, or there's going to be students who have to drop out of their college experience because their parents no longer have their jobs. They can't pay off the Parent Plus loan. They can't pay anything. Like, everything is affecting folks. So I always just try to say, find something that has a direct correlation. And if it's not at a federal level, find something that's on that local level, right? That's what I always say. Somebody said politics haven't really been politicking lately. That's because stuff is already getting cemented. We're starting to lose the battle in politics where it's going to be a point where there's going to be some things we can't vote on anymore. It's just going to be the way it is if things continue in the way that they are. So while we still have this tiny sliver of hope with a few things that you can still vote on, once it's gone, only way to kind of get things back are acts of violence. That's all I'm saying. And since everybody being scary, I don't see that happening. So there's that. All right. What else do I have here? Oh, Cardi and Nicki. Okay. I'll say this. I think the biggest thing folks should remember is that the internet is permanent, right? And so things that are out there will always be out there. And I wish, because I'm entertained by both of them as far as like what they do. I think Nicki, I'll just do both of them. Here's the thing I have with Nicki. Nicki has accolades that I think no other woman in rap is ever going to be able to accomplish at this point, unless something happens in music. She is so far beyond what's capable for some artists that come after her, just because she was able to have this great window where she really just ran hip hop as a woman, right? And so I wish sometimes she could sit in that and understand that she doesn't have, and I'm just speaking on from the outside looking in, because I don't really follow her. I don't really follow Cardi. I don't have their albums, but I do listen on occasion. I keep my ear to the street. But from the outside looking in, it makes her come off very insecure with some of her antics. That's just what it looks like from the outside looking in. I wish she could really latch on and understand that, listen, you've changed the game, bask in it, enjoy it, and just continue to put out the great music. Whoever you got beef or drama with, it is what it is. But when you lay it all out on Twitter every day, you start to kind of chip away at the accolades. You chip away at the legacy. And people like me who really don't follow you to begin with, the only thing that we can judge you by is your current actions. There's that. As far as Cardi, it's kind of the same thing. And it's kind of like if somebody keeps throwing something out there, stop taking the bait, Cardi, right? You just released your album. Enjoy it. Bask in it. Market it. Go push your stuff. Why are you arguing with this woman all day? First of all, Nicki got beef with everybody anyway. So why are you acting as if you are the exception? Now, I feel like you already made a statement by not including her or any diss on her in your project to begin with. So that should have left. You should have kept that same energy. So as she said, whatever she said, you should have just left it that and let her talk to herself. But you jumped right in it. So now you look just as crazy. You both are whacking on each other's children. I'm like, here we go. Here we go. Just remember that everything that's out there is permanent on the internet. And so those children are going to see the things that were said about them by both artists, right? I don't know. I think it's a flaw that happens when celebrities and everybody, we just have too much access to each other now. And again, this isn't anything new under the sun because the men do the same thing. When men, especially, when I think back to some of them beasts in the early 2000s, they were still whacking each other's kids too. Something in your 30-ass kids. It doesn't start and stop with Cardi and Nicki. So for those who are like children are off limits, that's how they've always moved in the game in general. I just want folks to, I just feel that with everything else we got going on right now, I wish they could put their energy into something else. That's just me. I'd say for Nicki, look, put it in the booth. Cardi, I guess you just dropped an album, so you don't have to. But look, why don't y'all just, I don't know. Motorsport should have never been a thing because damn it, here we are. And it's interesting to see how many people are really like married to just the idea of like fanhood, where you got folks literally fighting in the streets over these two. And I'm like, yeah, that is interesting. I have my favorite entertainers, but like I told you, I'm not catching a charge for nobody that I like musically, right? I'm not catching a charge for no Gladys Knight or Janet or Prince. You won't see me fight. If you don't like who I don't like, okay, I don't care. It's kind of like when white folks, which always pisses me off, I'm kind of shifting gears. One of the things I always see when it comes to a lot of black artists, a lot of white international fans love to say things like, oh, this artist is local. They love to say that about black artists, where it's like, oh, I live in Slovenia and we don't know who that is over here. Okay, but y'all also can't clap on the 2s and 4s. So what do you want me to do with that? That's fine if y'all choose to not. And really the bigger conversation is it tends to be labels that just don't market black artists in some international markets unless they feel that they're going to get their money's worth. That's really the conversation. But folks are so latched on to the racism that they will use that same system and then downplay the contributions of black artists in music because they weren't known in the Czech Republic. Okay, whatever. There's that. Stan Goose really just snatched the fun out of the music industry. But I think for a lot of these artists, understand the internet tells all. And I think for both Cardi and for Nicki, but really for Nicki in this one, in my opinion, it's just me. Nicki fans, y'all can fight me because y'all be whacking me anyway. I think for people like myself who don't really follow everything that they do, it makes it harder and harder and harder to be interested in what they put out afterwards. Because it's like, oh, I don't want to be part of that. That's a little chaotic over there, right? And like I said, I think, especially for Nicki, I think she's exceptionally talented as a rapper. So I would really like for her to just let her talent speak for itself. That's just me. And as far as Cardi, one of the things that I said, I think on the last live is what works for Cardi is that Cardi has a likable personality. But when you kind of engage in this kind of thing, then it makes people look back at other things you've done. And then they're like, actually, wait a minute. You did say this way back. And so y'all get whacked. So there's that. Enough on them. I don't care enough. And then I did see the military speech of Pete Hegseth. Like I said, there's this whole pocket of, especially like a Pete Hegseth, there's a lot of white men who are reliving their childhood fantasies of what they wanted the military to be. Like there's this obsession of just death and war and let's go out there and get them. And and they treat the troops as if they're disposable and constantly want to just throw us into some nonsense, which is wild to me. And so and I'm going to say for black folks that are in the military, I just want y'all to be careful, especially those who are enlisting or going to officer school or who are making the choice to join the services after high school. Now that they've also said we're going to pull out and get rid of our hazing regulations where we just need them to be a little bit tougher, anything can go, understand what that means. That means they don't have a problem kicking you in the ribs while you're down at basic training because now there's no, with a steel-toe boot because now there's no accountability. Like, understand what that's rooted in. And we know that especially with the military. Now, the military recruits all kinds of people. There's all kinds of people who join the military, but there is a pocket of the military folks, again, who, like we said, especially when we're talking about that white demographic, this was their only option. in order to have an opportunity for a viable lifestyle. And they get into the space and they run into another black troop who's in a similar situation, and it pisses them off that after all of the head starts and all of everything else, they're in the same predicament. And now because the military is a space where there is a conversation of force and everything, this is the moment where a lot of folks utilize that anger, that resentment towards other folks who are not white men. They even do it against their own white women that are in the military. So I just want folks to be careful. They already want to pretty much kick everybody out that's not a white man. And to me, I'm like, well, fine, y'all go on to the front lines. I don't like seeing us go and take a bullet for this country anyway. So if y'all want an all-white male military, go for it. Be my guest. I will not stop you if you decide that that's going to be it moving forward. Because I need us to be home with our families, right? I don't need us to be going over to whatever country fighting some random people we've never met and getting blown up and being collateral because a bunch of bigwigs want to start a bunch of stuff amongst each other and then make the people go and do the fighting for them, right? That's how I feel about that. And even the conversation with like the facial grooming and making it so that black men can't have beards. One of the things that we've talked about, we know that for a lot of black folks, we have coily hair, right? And that also includes our facial hair. And for me, I'm always transparent. I have a hard time. I don't ever grow this out just because I don't know how I'll look with the full beard. Maybe one day I'll grow it out, but I kind of like just having this here. But even keeping this kind of, it's not clean shaven right now. I got my little stubble and stuff here, right? All this facial hair is here. But I can't ever shave close because my hair or my facial hair coils under the skin. It doesn't grow straight out. And so if I shave close, I'm going to have a rack of ingrown hairs and razor bumps on both sides, no matter what. And it doesn't matter what product I use. I have used Skin Tight. I have used Bump Stop, everything under the sun. I just have curly hair. It curls under, right? I literally got to go and get a needle and find the breaking point at the skin and then pull the hair out. It sounds graphic, but that's my experience. And so that's the experience for a lot of black men. So the idea of pointing that out, knowing that the military at one point had an exception because they understood that was something that affected black men collectively when it came to grooming, and saying, okay, we're going to give you guys a pass on that, to go back and gut that and be like, nope, if you can't do it, you need to find something else. You know what it's rooted in the same way that they've gutted all the DEI stuff in the military too. So you know what? If y'all want to have an all-white military and y'all want to go to the front lines and get blown up, go ahead and be our guest, right? Let everybody else be with their families. All right. We're going to start winding down soon. I'm going to pass on that last topic because it's not that important. So we'll chop it up in the chat for a little bit before I call it a night. Because that is that. So I'll read some comments and then we'll go from there. Start Pay said you pay off your car notes and still not paid off as you owe insurance and tags continuously. And tell you, and I told you I was mad when I had to buy a new car. That's part of the reason why my insurance went up. But it wasn't no $278 a few months ago. My car insurance new policy just started on October 2nd, like a whole new policy for the year, and it definitely went up like $300 something for annually. I'm like, here we go, right? I was mad I had to buy a new car, but that old car was just making too many expensive sounds. I had it since 2014. It was a 2010. My brother Marcus had it before I did, and Marcus got it when he was like 17, and he was driving that car into the ground. You know how 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds drive. He was boom, hitting everything, hitting every pothole and tearing up the shocks, and I had to put so much maintenance into that car. And so that car was like, I can't do no more. I'm sorry. I don't think I'm going to make it through 2025. I said, okay, fine. You gave me a good decade, and I thank you. You gave me almost 200,000 miles. I'm going to let you go on to glory, right? And so I had to go buy a new car this year. I was so mad about it because I didn't have a car note, but whatever. Let's see. So let's see here. Where are we going here? Somebody said they're too grown. Okay, that's about the two rappers. Yeah. I'm not really trying to whack either of them. I'm trying to give them their space, but it's just like after a certain point, and I feel like once you've been in the industry for a certain amount of time, you're supposed to just move different, right? So that's the frustration I had. I was like, every time I got on social media, I'm like, they still fighting? It was like 3 days. I'm like, how much fighting y'all gonna be doing? And this person's telling this person to pull up, and you said it's about my child and something and hitting the spoons, and this person said that, and I was like, okay. And then once you put them fan bases in there, you know they go at it. Like I saw that at least they took it to iTunes. I saw they started having like a chart battle on iTunes, and some of the Nicki songs had went back like to the top of the charts, and Cardi's was. I was like, okay, well, keep it over there. But yeah, okay. We got too much access to the celebrities. Too much access. They have too much access to us. And because of that, we can now see their vulnerabilities. Because again, I guarantee you, had something like a Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff been out 20, 30 years ago, a lot of our favorite entertainers that we love and hold near and near and dear and close to our hearts, a lot of them would behave in the same way, right? Including some of the legends. And then they started telling personal business and stuff we ain't know about. I said, see, okay, all right. Just Leah said the rap beefs are mostly staged in our publicity stunts. I can almost hear that, but I also really feel that Cardi and Nicki don't deal with each other. I don't even think that part was publicity. I think that was from the heart from both of them. They both tell you exactly how they feel. Shauna said, Pete, his own mama says he's trash Hegseth coin, but I love Loree Daniel Favors. She has, when I tell you, she has an amazing show. Like I said, if you listen to Urban View, channel 126 on Sirius XM, Loree Daniel Favors has my favorite show. That she comes on, I think, at 10 a.m. Excellent show. That woman is so on it. I have never even heard her stutter before. I be getting mad sometimes on the live because I be trying to get my point out, and I'm like, she can just fact after fact and just go and be on it. She is a sight to see. Really, I really appreciate her show. So she's excellent. Somebody said Christy Nome, Cash Patel, Hegseth are all cosplaying, ego-driven. And I want people to remember all these folks too, by the way. So when this administration is no longer in power, remember how these folks moved, because these are going to be the people that are going to still try to act like, look, I need the hammer to be dropped when we get out of this. We can't move like we did after January 6th and give everybody a slap on the wrist and put somebody soft in there like Merrick Garland, who's not going to get anything done, and just, hold the line for 4 and 5 and 6 years, and then nothing gets done. Trump gets off on everything, and he says, now I'm going to really show y'all. Since you thought you was going to give me 34 convictions. Even that stupid judge in New York who was like, the sentencing will be a ceremonial sentencing, but he won't really serve. It's a ceremonial sentencing. The way Trump right now, if I was a judge, would be making demands from cell block 8, okay? And I would have paid somebody to handle the job and get it done while he was in there so we wouldn't have to deal with him no more. But everybody was soft and caved, right? A mess. Rona W said Cardi B did have some good one-liners. I ain't gonna lie. Some of those I ain't gonna lie. I was like, dang. Ooh. I did laugh at some of the things. I was like, geez Louise. Right? Raynette said it was longer than 3 days. I checked out after like day 3. I was like, I don't care no more. I moved on. But and they'll probably still be going. Let's see. Last but not least, what do you think about comedians going abroad for a paycheck? You mean like doing comedy shows abroad? I mean, that's what they normally do, unless there's something that I'm missing in the context with that. If there's something I'm not getting. But yeah, I know a lot of comedians do like international shows and stuff. And at this point, I feel like even here, for those who are business owners, since the United States is burning all the bridges with everybody, some of you guys who do business, you might want to start making connections with people globally and build those relationships now. So as all these different countries be like, we're not working with the U.S. anymore, you already at least have that rapport with whatever vendor or wholesale person you work with, and they keep you in the pocket, right? Angela Crawley said, yeah, Calvin, the goatee works for your facial shape. It does. Only thing I don't like is I have cheeks now. I miss, you remember my old videos, I had cheekbones chiseled and a sharp jawline, but your adult weight kicks and your face fills out a little bit more. I'm like, so I have a rounder face now, but it's fine. I'll get used to it. That was the only highlight of when I got sick last year and lost all that weight. My face went back to chisel mode. And so for about 3 weeks, I was like, ooh, I look very model-esque now. These cheeks are filling back up again. All right. It's okay, though. No worries. Thank you, though. Thank you. No shadow ban me YouTube. I really feel like not enough people, especially politicians, stood up for Jasmine Crockett when old face Laura Loomer said that foul-ish about her. First of all, I think in the Democratic Party, the flaw that works against them at the moment is too many of them are still married to respectability, and it's still married to this idea of let's show everybody how well behaved we can be. Let's show everybody that we still have decorum. And that's all lovely. That's all fine and dandy. But you're not dealing with an opposing party that moves in that same manner. And they have been vile. They have been gutter. They have been bare-bottomed here. And none of that matters. And so when I look at somebody like a Hakeem Jeffries who just did that speech the other day, say it to my face. I'm like, Hakeem, I'm not even scared of you. You don't even sound convincing. What? You know, and so some people they whack Jasmine because they don't think she has any couth behind her. I'm like, honestly, here's the thing. I feel that Jasmine speaks a language that a lot of people can understand. For people who may not necessarily be really locked into politics, when Jasmine says something, they understand exactly what it is that she means. And when it comes to a political movement, you need voices that represent every group that it is that you're trying to represent. You need voices that can appeal and speak to the different, masses. One of the compliments that I get on here the most is people say, Calvin, you do a great job of explaining politics in a way that I can understand, right? Maybe that's my gift. There are some other people who I think do a way better job of this, but maybe they're a bit more, and I don't know, maybe the verbiage and the narratives and the language and stuff that they use is a little bit more foreign, or maybe they're a little too formal and not as personable. Everybody has their own way of doing things. But so with Jasmine, I think some of the critiques that she got were unwarranted. People were, oh, she has to act this way, she has to act that way. And I'm like, why are we policing her tone? Why, if she's out here getting the job done, if she's out here being one of the few people to actually say, hell no, this is not how we're going to do this, I don't see what the problem is. And so for folks who are like, oh no, but she makes black women look bad. No, she does not. The only people that feel that way are the people who care about what white people think about us collectively. And that's where you mess up. When you spend too much time thinking about what this demographic thinks about us, it's like when people say the whole line about, especially when we get killed by police unarmed by like a white cop, and they're like, well, how can you expect them to respect us if we don't respect ourselves? They don't respect themselves. So why are you using them as a threshold of measurement to how we should conduct ourselves all through the eyes of what you want them to expect? They don't expect anything from us. So why are we even playing into that game? This is why when I look at the Van Joneses and the Paris Denards and all the other ones who want to tap dance and walk on eggshells and play both sides of the fence, and Emmanuel Aiko and all them other ones who all of a sudden want to say, I can be one of the good ones. None of that matters. You're going to still be an N-word to them no matter at the end of the day. And so I do agree that a lot of people with Jasmine, and even in that party where she was like, I'm going to fall back since everybody's being real flaky in the party, fine. I'll fall back and just do my own thing. That's the unfortunate issue we have. That's why I said there has to be a lot of primaries. There's a lot of folks, unfortunately, who are in the way because they've become professional politicians where they know how to play the game of getting reelected, but they don't know how to play the game of getting anything done. And so a lot of them are in the way of progress. A lot of them are too scared to really step out there because they don't want to let go of the old guard politically. We are no longer in 1996. This is no longer the era where Newt Gingrich and Joe Biden can argue and fight all day on the floor and then go to lunch together. Those days are gone. It's now literally where the politicians literally don't mind if other politicians die. They make jokes about politicians that get murdered in their homes. They make jokes about, former Speaker of the House's husband getting hit upside the head with a hammer. This is not the same political climate that we're in. And so, unfortunately, some folks are going to have to just understand respectability is getting us nowhere at the moment. And it makes me think back to that Phil Donahue episode where the episode is called The Subject is Race. It's still on YouTube. It's one of my favorite things to watch every now and then, where, again, you have all of these black leaders and politicians and folks in the community. And what's so crazy is there's some who were still harping on to that idea of respectability politics way back in 1991, 92, 93, 94. And some of the conversations that they were having then, we're still having right now. And that respectability got us nowhere. If we're talking respectability, the perfect example with Barack Obama, right? Harvard graduate, also Columbia graduate, or maybe I forgot where he was. Wife, lawyer, right? But both lawyers, upstanding family, upstanding man. Excellent, just the demeanor, respectful, loving. Mother-in-law can move in the White House as well. We're even going to get 2 dogs. Our daughters are going to be well-behaved. We're going to always make sure you never catch us slipping up. You're never going to see Michelle and Barack cussing each other out as they're getting off of Air Force One. Michelle is not going to slap Barack's hand when he tries to hold it. Even if she's pissed off with him that day, we won't know about it, but understand when they get in that White House and close that door, then that she'll cuss him out about whatever it is. We were never going to see anything that went out of pocket because they understood exactly what them being in that position was going to mean symbolically for us, but also what that was going to mean when it came to internal hatred and rage towards black people. And they were never going to give white people that opportunity to say that these people were uncouth or they were ghetto or blah, 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 blah. And even after all of that, look how they still were treated. Michelle Obama was all kind of apes and monkeys and this, that, and the third. that New Yorker article, even before she got into office, it was the picture of her with the grenade and the afro and the rebel thing tied behind her head and just violent and angry. There was the pictures with the watermelon on the White House lawn. There was all these different things that were taking place. The 2 daughters were going to be pregnant by 17 and this, that, and the third. And the baby mama of Michelle Obama's living in the house. They're talking about her mama and everything. Like, all of that didn't matter because, again, when we're talking the conversation of respectability, there is no conversation of respectability to people who envy your experience, who think you're not supposed to be there because they are. And so because white America could never accept the fact that there was a black guy in the White House who had a black wife and some black kids, and even the dogs were black, and even the dog that had white on them, the white was on the underbelly. So when the dog lays in the mud, it's only the white part that gets dirty. They weren't having it, right? And so no matter how much respectability was there, they were never going to be good enough. And part of the reason why we're dealing with a lot of what we're dealing with right now is because of that white rage and that white backlash, all against a very respectable presidency, minus the Syria drones bombing and everything else like that. But again, that wasn't good enough. You know, even before Orange Man even came into politics, how did he really get into the conversation? I want Barack Obama to release his college grades because we need to check and see. There's no way. Meanwhile, we haven't seen Trump's because we know he was dumb as hell and barely got through anything, right? We know his situation, and we also need to see his birth certificate. And Michelle, she only became this because of DEI and blah, 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 blah. So when people jump on the, oh, well, if we carry ourselves differently, they'll treat us better. They won't. Martin Luther King was shot in a suit. In a suit. Malcolm X was shot in a suit. Medgar Evers was shot in a suit coming home, right? That respectability doesn't work. And unfortunately, we have people in politics who will not move on past that because they're still moving as if it's 1996. They're still moving in a way where they can no longer relate to the people. And they're still operating in an old guard that is now dated. And I need people to get with the times. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because we've been... All right, let me read some last few comments and we're going to go to bed because I've been on this a little too long tonight. So I appreciate y'all for hanging with me all night and getting through our technical difficulties. But yeah, I'm just tired of everybody being so weak. Like, just picture if I walked on eggshells all day on this channel. Half of y'all wouldn't watch. A lot of you like this channel because I just say how I feel in the moment. It is what it is because you can't get mad at facts, right? But if I spent so much time every day, well, not all white people, but not all, okay. Now, if we can all come together and yeah, I know slavery happened. And again, there are good white people. Like half y'all be like, I can't do it. You Calvin, okay, bye. That's the reality. You just got to say it like you freaking mean it. Okay. That's very Wendy Williams-esque, but that's just where we're at right now. Everybody else gets to be as vile and tacky as they want. And folks are getting mad at folks for actually just putting the truth out there. Jasmine isn't even out of pocket with how she does stuff. She's just laying out the facts. Same thing with Al Green, who's another one who I think people sleep on. Al Green, to me, is a politician that's about it. He's one of the few ones that keeps trying to put out articles of impeachment against Orange Man, even from the first term. They're like, Al, please. It's not the time. It's not the time. They keep saying that. I don't care. Here's some more articles of impeachment, and I'm going to tell you why. Right? Okay. And as far as Laura Loomer, like we said, she has other things she needs to worry about. Somebody said, where have you found yourself, Calvin? Is this a new studio setup? It must have missed the backstory on the Blue Bricks. Yeah, I moved out of my last space, back in March. Yeah, so I moved. And then, so this is the space for now. And yeah, it's great. Lovely. I'm just making some life changes that also include like a bigger relocation. So as far as like just leaving the whole DMV. So at the moment, I got out of my lease because I was tired of paying $3,100 plus the parking garage to be in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm like, I'm spending so much money for no reason. And then I already knew I wanted to make some changes career-wise and do some things. So, if you've been around, you've probably seen me in your city as of late outside of DC, for those who know what I'm talking about. So I've been kind of like bouncing around and kind of almost not living in 2 cities right now, but spending a lot of time here and a lot of time in another city. So, yeah, this is an office. This is the office that I shoot everything. All my studio equipment is over there. And yeah, so this is the setup for now. So yeah, I moved out of that spot. And I had to custom people out not too long ago anyway for some other stuff. So yeah, that's that. Thank you, about it, Jackson. Trust me, you're a resident baby boomer. The old tactics will not work for this season. Exactly. In the same way that they're moving in an unconventional way, we got to get unconventionally creative to move around this. And this is why I keep saying this is the time to move in community, because all the ideas are right in the community. All of the greatness that we possess always comes out of our community. Everything that we've been able to pull ourselves out of and the way that we've been able to maneuver has always been because we were moving in a space of community. That's where we're going to have to be at the moment, right? Can't be afraid. This is the time to get active, right? If you've ever been nervous about something or unsure, this is the time to say, you know what? F it. What's the worst that can happen? Because we already through the worst of it now. So we might as well go ahead and be 10 toes down. Somebody said, and the idiot mega party blames Barack Obama being president for the issues that they're going on now. The brain matter is just crazy. It's kind of like when you always see them say he was the most racially divisive president. I say he never talked about race. Y'all just made it about that. He really walked on eggshells to keep y'all comfortable. He was having, summits and let's just talk over a bottle of beer and he always had to talk in parables to try to keep everybody happy. But again, that image of seeing him there and they were just shaking every time they see him. Michelle Obama's on Sesame Street. Michelle Obama's on Jimmy. They found out Malia Obama got that deal to work on the films. Just about to die. Ridiculous. Somebody said, need to. Oh, it's just New York. I'm back and forth between New York right now. Yeah. Let's see. But I love DC, so it's really hard to leave because I don't want to leave. Like, this is home for me. This is where I've been since I was 18, minus the 1 year that I went home after college. So, yeah. Anyway, this has been a great live. I thank y'all for hanging with me. Book club tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern for those who were there. Again, Color of Law, chapters 1 through 3. The book is also on Audible for those who don't have time to order the book in this by the time that we get to it. You can also listen to the book on Audible. And if you didn't get a chance to read the book, you can still just join and participate and just listen. And then because I'll just give you a heads up after we do 1 through 3, then we're gonna do 4 through 6, so you can just be caught up for the next one, right? Yeah. All right. Anyway, that's all I have for tonight. Thank y'all for hanging with me. Don't forget. Now, listen, I told y'all. Oh, by the way, because a lot of people keep saying this, check and make sure if you're still subscribed. Because a lot of you keep saying you're not getting notifications or you don't find out about the lives until after the fact. Make sure you're still subscribed because maybe you got unsubscribed somehow or YouTube does whatever it does. And then also make sure you've also hit that little bell that gives you notifications when I post something. Because even for this live, I made the announcement yesterday, right? And yes, please check out that Kirk Franklin video I did. Don't be asking me for new ideas and then I do it and y'all will be watching. I'm gonna give you some grace though because it is a subject that wouldn't be popular. But yeah, so check that video out too. The new series I'm starting called Culture Trip. And this is the only time I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not going to say anything else about it until it's out. I have selected my next So What Happened artist and their project, and I'm not telling you what it is, and I'm not telling you when it's coming out. It'll just be there when it's there, and don't ask me about it because I won't answer. You'll just see it when it's ready. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm out, folks. Stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. And remember, use your discernment and be in community. All right, folks. See you. Good night.